Welcome to the Chaska City Council meeting for Monday, February 26, 2024. We'll call the meeting to order. Will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I didn't add is calling the meeting to order at 7 o'clock, so get that on the official records. What a day today, huh? 57 degrees out in February. People are in shorts and
eating dinner on our deck.
tank tops. It's crazy. But I'll take it.
Tomorrow's supposed to snow.
Yeah, I know. I heard that, but I'm sailing away. I get to leave for a little while. We'll talk about that later. All right, with that, Elise, we call roll, please.
Councilmember Hatfield. Here. Councilmember Hubbard. Councilmember Wong.
Here.
Councilmember McGraw.
Here.
Here. Councilmember Hubbard is out of the state at this time, so she will not be joining us. So, with that, I would, about adopting the agenda, if corrections or additions, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve agenda.
Motion to approve agenda by Councilmember Hatfield. Second by Councilmember McGraw. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Post same sign. Motion carries. Visitor presentation. I don't think there's anyone here for visitor presentation, but I just like to make a few comments regarding what happened in Burnsville here recently. I just want to offer mine, the residents of Chaska, our condolences to the families of officers Paul Elmstrand, Matthew Ruge, and fire medic Adam Finseth, along with the Burnsville Police Department, Fire Department, Burnsville City employees, and the whole community of Burnsville. My heart and prayers goes out to the whole community there. It's got to be a very challenging time there. As I reflect back on these events that occurred in Burnsville, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I can't figure out why do people do this? It's just not, I can't comprehend that. I don't know. But every time someone falls on the line of duty, it is truly heartbreaking. This time the emotions are hitting out a little harder. It's just too damn close to home. That's right around the corner. We always believe these type of things will happen in other communities, either in a big city or far away from here, you know, but this one was just close. Like I said, this just happened in our backyard. Some of us had personal connections to the fallen officers and the fire medic. Some of us know the first responders that were at the scene. There are also many connections between our communities from family, friends, and colleagues. And I'm sure you all know by now that Officer Elmstrand and his family are residents of Chaska. We have purposely been respecting their privacy by not saying that they lived here, but offering as much assistance as we can. We're all hurting and going through a range of emotions, sad, anger, maybe even just mad as hell. I encourage you all, lean on your support groups, whether that's your clergy, your friends, family, or resources available through your employee assistance program. To our police and fire personnel, we all thank you for your service and your dedication to this community. We appreciate everything you do for us. Many times you put aside your own personal safety to protect others, and many of them you don't know, just to keep them safe. Just know that your dedication, selflessness, and courage do not go unnoticed. You're all in the line of work because you want to make a difference in our communities and generally in the world. Every one of you puts on your uniform with every intention to go home to your families after your shifts, and I pray that you always do. Thank you all for your service to our community. May God bless each and every one of you and your families, and more importantly, always be vigilant and please be safe. I'm not really sure how you follow that. I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything. Or do we just want to move on?
That was well said. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. You're not visitor presentation? No?
They're here for.
Okay. All right. All right, with that, we're gonna try to move on here and we'll approve the previous meeting minutes. They are from 2/5/24. So again, if there are no corrections or additions, I would entertain a motion to,
Motion to approve.
motion by Councilmember Hatfield,
Second.
second by Councilmember Wong. Was it Wong?
Yep.
Sorry. To approve, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Post same sign. Motion carries. All right, that moves us to item 7, which is consent. These are items we have to vote on, not necessarily a conversation, but any and all can be pulled and talked about if necessary. So with that, is there anyone that has anything they need to talk about regarding consent? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve consent.
Motion to approve consent.
Motion by Councilmember McGraw,
Second.
second by Councilmember Wong to approve consent. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye, post same sign. Motion carries. Right, move to action item 8, 8A, adopt resolution 2024-18, approval of a concept plan for Sconce Woods, second edition, a 14-lot subdivision at 3675 Big Woods Boulevard.
Mayor and Councilmember, this item is coming back to you from the Planning Commission with a recommendation of approval. This is, like it says, the second phase of Ensconced Woods. If you haven't been up into that neighborhood yet, it's really nice. Some of the houses that have been being built up there really look nice, fit in the area really well, and so we're excited to see them come through with the second phase of that development. I'm going to turn it over to Ashley, who's going to present this item and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Tonight before you this evening is a concept plan.
Is that mic closer to you? I can barely hear you. I'm sorry.
Is this better?
Yes.
Perfect. The concept plan before you this evening is from Matthew Ryland of Johnson Ryland Builders and Remodelers. It's at the Carlson site, which is generally located east of 212 on the Rivertown Heights Second Edition development, south of Big Woods and Ensconced Woods, the first edition, and then north and west of Chaska Boulevard, which essentially wraps around to the south and east. As you know, Chaska has a 3-step review process. Each of those steps does come before the Planning Commission and the City Council. Tonight we are in the concept plan review phase. So generally the plans are just that, they're general. Our review of those plans is at a pretty high level, and really the intent of this phase is to identify any issues to be looked at closer as we move through those final 2 phases. Again, those final 2 phases come before you as the council. The Carlson site is roughly 15.5 acres in size, has some pretty significant topography. There's roughly 60 feet of elevation change from the highest point along the western property line, dropping down to the lowest point along the northern property line. There are 3 areas that are considered steep slope, meaning that those slopes exceed 18%. Those 3 areas are highlighted in red on the screen before you. So again, in that northern area, and then there is sort of this finger, if you will, that extends from the southern property line. The full tree inventory has not yet been completed. That would happen before it comes back through the preliminary plat phase and the rezoning phase. But generally, a review of this site does indicate that there is a woodland preservation area that does exist on the property, generally in the most sloped areas. The concept plan that they are bringing before you extends access and sidewalks from 2 stubs that were provided in the Rivertown Heights Second Edition. So that development again is just to the west of this site. Those two stubs effectively would be connected with a little horseshoe shape to provide access to 14 new single-family residential lots. Those lots range in size from 11,000 to 40,000 square feet, with the larger of those lots fanning out on the east side of that ring road. The concept plan also includes a roughly 5-acre outlot, which would be on the east side. That ownership would be retained by the existing property owner for future development. The applicant also submitted conceptual house designs based on some of their other developments. These concept house plans show that they would start roughly in the 800s. They would be 3,000 to 4,000 square feet and be a mix of single and two-story homes. Utilities for the new lots would be extended from stubs again that were provided from that Rivertown Heights development to the south. Stormwater.
Can I stop you there? When I was looking at our maps, it talks about the Rivertown Heights, second edition as future development. Is that just what the map is? Is that there and being done?
It's under construction.
Well, I mean, I know that there's something going on back there, but I just didn't know if they were this far, because I was wondering how we were gonna get utilities here without a road and all that stuff, so, okay.
Stormwater for the new development was contemplated as part of the Rivertown Heights. So there would be more information that would be submitted as part of the preliminary review phase, essentially to ensure that our stormwater requirements are being met. The property is currently zoned for open development. That is a holding zone, essentially, that allows for property to be rezoned at the time of development. The applicant's narrative indicates that the property would be rezoned to PRD, so planned residential development, as part of that next review phase. One of the questions that staff evaluated when we were reviewing the concept plan was whether or not the density was consistent with the comprehensive guide plan's designation of low density for the site. That designation does indicate a density of 2 to 5 units per net acre. And the plan before you this evening has a density of 1.3 units per net acre. So again, the site's topography really does present a challenge in meeting that density threshold, but that is something that we would continue to review as the project moves through the process. The submitted concept plan is consistent rather with what was shown as part of the development for Rivertown Heights. The plan before you this evening does have 2 fewer lots though than what was originally shown, and that's likely again the result of topography of the site and some reconfiguration that happened. I know that. Ultimately, staff finds the setbacks that are shown in the plan are reasonable. And they're consistent with adjacent developments, and they would allow for greater preservation and separation from that sloped area on the east side of the property. At the direction of staff, the applicant submitted a ghost plat. The ghost plat incorporates that eastern 5 acres as well as a 16-acre property to the east that's currently also held by the Carlsons. And ultimately that shows 27 additional residential lots with access from 2 cul-de-sacs extending from the Llano property. So this sort of development would require development of both properties.
How would they get access there? Is that through the Llano way to the west?
Yeah,
Okay, so there's gotta be a lot of work done before that happens.
there's a lot of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that would happen between now and then to allow for development that's shown on the ghost plat.
It just makes sure that when people do move in, they know what to expect in the future.
I totally agree with that. And this is all starting to come back from early talks about there's that second development has to come in the other way, so. But yeah, I totally agree that we're showing that before they even start marketing.
At the planning commission, I'll talk a little bit about this later, but I'll maybe move it to this slide. At the planning commission, they also ask questions about ghost plat and if, a ghost plat coming before does guarantee approval of a future development. And the answer was no. Ultimately, it is just showing that development could happen. It could happen in this configuration. It also allows us as planners to do a preliminary analysis to ensure that connectivity is possible.
Do we have any kind of guarantees in place that they market it with that there? We've, there's nothing worse than someone coming to us and saying, they never told us. Do we know that that will be marketed in their lots for sale, that there are properties behind that will be lots in future?
The applicant's here this evening. I think that's probably a great question for them to answer as to how they do market that to people who are interested in purchasing properties. So I'll defer that question to the applicant. The concept plan that's submitted does show that the rear lot lines extend into the steep slope areas. As you'll note, included in your resolution this evening is a condition of approval essentially to adjust those rear lot lines to be more consistent with the 30-foot no-mow, no-grade setback line. That line is shown in red, but staff would work with the applicant and the developer to ensure a less zigzaggy, jagged line to something that makes more sense to a future property owner. Staff is recommending this for a few reasons. Primarily because the applicant is, again, requesting reduced setbacks. It would ensure the greatest protection of those steep slope areas. It wouldn't impact the location of future structures because there still is that 50-foot setback. So the 20-foot rear setback essentially would get to that same distance. And then also there's a clear delineation for future property owners to know where their property is and where they can and can't do things. And then it also would help achieve those density goals of the comprehensive guide plan. I included in your packet for this evening, the applicant did submit a memo. Ultimately, they would prefer to move forward with the lot lines as they are shown. They are here this evening, so I believe they plan to speak to you in more detail on that. There were, just to give a quick summary of the meetings that have happened regarding the concept plan. Back in December, the applicant held a neighborhood meeting. There were 3 residents that attended that meeting. They asked questions about side yard setbacks and just the locations of the new homes in relation to their developments. And then after the neighborhood meeting, there was 1 additional resident who contacted the applicant and just confirmed that there wouldn't be a right-of-way extension coming from their development to the north, so that ensconced Woods First Edition. And then last week, 2 weeks ago, the Planning Commission reviewed the concept plan. Ultimately, they discussed continuity of neighborhoods and just how this neighborhood would fit into the context of those existing neighborhoods or the neighborhoods that are currently under construction. They also discussed the proposed setbacks. There was 1 commissioner who expressed some concerns related to the side yard setbacks. But the remainder of the commission ultimately expressed that they were comfortable with what was being proposed. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, they asked some questions about just what a ghost plat was and whether or not that guaranteed future approval. And so ultimately on a 6-1 vote, the Planning Commission recommended the City Council approve the concept plan. And their recommendation did include the adjustment of those rear lot lines to that 30-foot line. So with that, I'll look for a motion, and Mayor, I will turn it back to you for any questions.
Questions up here?
Sometimes I wouldn't have attended because of my role here, but I've lived a busy life, so I may have missed it. What was that neighborhood meeting? Because most of it's future development.
like, what was the scope of that neighborhood meeting? Because I am in Founder's Ridge and I don't recall being notified of that, but again, full disclosure that I may have completely missed that. I wouldn't have attended it due to my role up here, but I'm just kind of curious because most of the surrounding houses are actually not built and there's no one living there. So I'm kind of curious when we say neighborhood meeting, what that scope was.
Correct, Mayor and Commission and Council Member, sorry about that. As with any other project, any property within 500 feet was notified of the neighborhood meeting. But as to your note, many of the properties were owned by just a few parties because they are under construction or being sold by the developer or a developer rather.
So do we think Founder's Ridge was in that 500 feet? Okay.
There was.
I might have missed it because I'm just curious because I haven't heard much from my neighbors and we have a pretty active group up there. So I'm just curious, but okay. I probably missed it
I
or
think, is it fair to say portions of Founder's Ridge,
Yeah.
not the
Maybe
entire
not.
thing? Yeah.
I would think you wouldn't be in that circle.
Okay.
I think you'd be out of
good.
that.
So I didn't just completely miss it. Which would surprise me.
500 feet from that side to you would be, oof.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
My
But
other-
it's a good, I think it's a good question. Who actually got the notices and, do they really understand where it's at?
Mhm. I have other questions, but I'll wait for the developer because it has to do with access and naming, but that's probably more associated with.
Anyone else?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so with the, you mentioned that there's like no mow and no tree, no mow, no tree cutting in certain areas. Once the homeowners move in, what happens if they said, I hate these trees back here, I just want to cut them all the way down to the lot, to the property line?
We've had that happen before.
Yep, because we set up like conservation areas and stuff.
Yeah, we've actually had, usually what happens is their neighbors get really upset and they call us, and our enforcement action typically is a remediation plan where they have to actually go back and remediate the tree loss within the area. Obviously, the trees they cut are usually a lot more mature than the trees that are put back in, but we do actively work on those. They're usually not very fun issues, but it happens, and it's usually the neighbors that report on it.
So I guess in the cases where it does happen, or in the case when like the neighbors purchase the property, I assume that those easements or those preservation areas are like part of the escrow packet. that
They're part of the
signing-
title of the
title,
property.
yeah,
Yep.
okay. Yeah, which is like the 200 pages they're signing, it's things like that tend to get lost in the shuffle, which is my concern.
So it's part of the title of the property if there's a preservation easement put
Right.
in that area. In addition to that, or maybe in placement of that, depending on the circumstance, our city ordinance, our steep slope ordinance, right, protects those wooded steep slope areas and sets those no mow, no grade zones that buffer. So if it's just left to ordinance, that's not something that's necessarily going to show up in their title information. If there were a preservation easement put on top of that area that's preserved by ordinance or expanded, maybe even expanding upon, then that would show up in that title.
So if I know plenty of people who grew up in other states where like steep slopes not a big deal. You build in slopes, you do other stuff with slopes, and no one raises an eyebrow about it, right? And then so they buy a nice home here. I can afford a nice home in Chaska, choose to move in. I'll build a shed back there and I'll just knock over some trees and stuff. Don't know, how would they know that there's an ordinance about that?
Typically, the builder would be, sharing that with them as they're actually purchasing the house. Again, I think just like the other question that came up, I think that's really a good question to ask the developer about.
Yeah, because it's more than just it's more than the buyer who's building.
Yep.
It's that second, third.
Yep.
Like that's where it gets lost, right? Like full best intent, right? That they're gonna make sure they're communicating. I worry about that. the second builder, or the second buyer, the third buyer. Um, because I do well aware, right, like to your point, we'll remedy it. But that tree's, gonna look much different than the tree that's, especially this area. I mean, those are really big, mature
Yeah.
trees in that space.
I actually think there's some areas that we have in town, if I'm not mistaken, that have actual signage at the easements too. I think like Autumn Woods does, Cortina Woods, maybe.
Incorporated into.
Yeah, I think we could talk with the developer about doing that. Those aren't necessarily a fix all either. I
Yeah.
happen to live in a neighborhood that once had signs around the buffer.
Signs are only as good as the people that read them. If you don't read them, they're not any good.
They tend to walk.
I'd looked at the setbacks as well, but then looking back at some other projects, it seemed like that wasn't abnormal. And living downtown, I kind of welcome the idea of some variety and spacing and look of the home. So I think that I'm personally fine with that, but I did notice the setbacks thing, but like I said, I can't remember what, a couple projects last year that had similar or where they weren't exactly the same kind of thing, so.
I guess, my only comment about setbacks is that, and this isn't specific to this project, but, I've seen in other parts of the country, right, the setbacks started at maybe like 10 feet, right? And then it's, oh, we need more density. And then they started becoming, 7 feet, then 5 feet, 3 feet. Next thing you know, and if you go look at those same communities today, the setbacks are 2 feet or there's no setback requirement. The MDs are pretty much almost touching because they don't need to have one. And it's, part of it's that the plight of like urbanization and developers trying to, make a profit on the fact that they're building a home, right? And so my only concern is like, where's the, where do we kind of draw the line of like where that's enough, right? Because, over time, it's like, it's the old adage of, you threw a frog into a pot of boiling water, it'll just jump right out. You slip and turn up the water on it, it's gonna die in there. And that's because the matter of fact is that it's something that happens slowly over time. There's one project here, well, we did for that project. Well, then it's like another project and it's a little bit more, a little bit more. And so where does that end, right? And I think that we kind of value this as a community where it's a very suburban community. Homes are spread out, there's space. But are we going to have some neighborhoods that are going to be, really, really tight and practically on top of each other? So, like I said, not necessarily a tonight problem to solve, but I wanted to call that out because this is a great example of that sort of inching towards something where that density becomes an urban density, not a suburban density.
Although if you look at our setbacks throughout the community, we have a wide variety of setbacks already. I mean, you look in the Cold Ridge neighborhood. I mean, my house had a 10-foot setback on one side and a 5-foot setback on the other. And in that case, it was done because it made the houses more affordable. So there's also affordability component to it too. But then we have other neighborhoods that, the setbacks are much larger because that's sort of what they view the market is in that neighborhood. So we do have lots of different setbacks, depending sort of on the neighborhoods and what are the goals that you're trying to accomplish with that neighborhood?
The setbacks that are being proposed for this project are consistent with Ensconced Woods version 1, or the one that's being built right now. And that's consistent with, there's a lot of examples throughout the city with the setbacks that are similar to what's being proposed for this project. So I get your point. But I just also want to, provide that perspective that there's many examples of the setbacks that are being. Another piece on that is, limiting factors. One of the limiting factors on that it ends up being fire protection and safety. So that's a piece that we talk with as we're reviewing this, our fire department's involved in that review, in addition to the building codes. And there is a point where if buildings get close enough to each other, that starts to impact the sort of material requirements for those single family homes. And then that can have an economic impact as well. So that ends up being part of that discussion as to how close is too close. Once you cross a certain threshold, there's some impacts on that side that are, part of that conversation.
And it's part of the rhetorical question I'm asking also is like, where is that limit, so to speak? I'm not expecting an answer on that.
Thank you, because I don't know the building code very well. I'll be honest with you.
But it's sort of a rhetorical question.
But I will
guess
say
should be
that we
asking.
may not even have a choice. After we get to item number 5.
Yeah, that's a whole different, that's a different conversation
Yeah.
altogether, for sure. So, but no, like I said, I just want to put that out there because it's something that, as communities grow over time, these are things that we have to grapple with in terms of affordability, in terms of density and all this stuff, and also just, the systems that support it and infrastructure. But, it's like, what's the community look like that we want to have, right? And so that's just putting that out there as a rhetorical question for us as we look into the future.
This is, kind of a unique project because this part is the Sconce Woods and the other part is Rivertown Heights, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, I see the monument side, which I'll call from the south. But if you came from the north, you wouldn't be able to read that, I think. I don't know if it's a two-way sign.
Can we invite them up there? Cause I have a question
Yeah.
related to
Why
that.
don't you come on up, just state your name and who you're with for our records, please.
I'm Paul Ryland with Johnson Ryland Builders and Ensconced Woods LLC.
So. I just brought it up and then John, you can go, the monument sign, is that gonna be a one-sided sign?
It is a one-sided sign. We did say, we didn't change our application. Staff didn't recommend it, but we're ready to do 2 signs on.
I was gonna say, if you come in one way, you wouldn't know on the other,
Yeah, we thought that the sign would be on the more well-traveled side, but we're prepared to put 2 signs up.
So I have a question and a comment. So I'll ask the question first. What, when I look at the development with Rivertown Heights, how do you anticipate construction traffic coming into this neighborhood?
Yeah, so I think what's hopefully, we were kind of waiting to see if they were going to go ahead and build this out. And we were, we're a smaller builder. We tend to do things in smaller pieces than they do. But they went ahead for final plat and construction drawings and they've started the whole construction of all that. So we're looking to get our entitlements in place and we may do the construction of the roads and the streets later this year if all of our entitlements come in. Or we might push that to next summer. But it might, but from a construction utility standpoint, they'll be done before we start. Most
So do
likely.
you envision them coming down? I don't know what the name of that road is, but like the road. Okay, I'll just flip the question around. My concern is, I'll get to my concern. You can access this property from Founder's Ridge. And I don't know who we've emailed, but there's been a long history of the other Ensconced Woods and not blaming the builders by any means, because delivery drivers make their own decisions. But a lot of traffic coming through Founder's Ridge into that neighborhood. And I look at this and I worry that happening again because there's going to be an access point from through Founder's Ridge. It'll be interesting because it'll go right in front of my house. I'll be well aware of it because it'll turn the corner right by my house. So I'm just curious because I worry about that because there is obviously the other road that would be down the road of houses that are being built by Rivertown Heights. So I'd just be very, like I said, that's why I'm curious because I worry about that access and from Founder's Ridge, which now is a dead end signage. Because we've had troubles. Now maybe the address is better. I know there was some address issues with the old property and GPS was telling them to go one way. So I just comment, I just appreciate, I know you're not gonna solve that now. But I want to throw that out there now because we've certainly had some interesting situations with, it's gotten better of late. We occasionally get the road, we got lots of signage up there. It's probably the most, I don't know if any of you have been by there. It's like the most signage you'll ever see on that road telling people where to go. But occasionally we still get a rogue semi that comes through the neighborhood. The other question I have, or I guess the other feedback is, I'm not a big fan. I mean, these namings work. I guess I'm not a big fan of calling it Ensconced Woods because it's completely disconnected from the other Ensconced Woods, which seems a little strange to me. Cause there's no connection, there's no road connecting it to them. I think it could be confusing for homeowners. You know, I don't think we're gonna go Wisconsin Woods 1, Wisconsin Woods 2, so it's just an observation feedback, it's a little, seems a little disjointed that you have two, they are next to each other, but there's no access between the two, so. Again, I don't know if you want to rename it, this is really in concept plan, but that's just something I thought was interesting that you do plan on putting signage up, calling it Wisconsin Woods when there's already a neighborhood called Wisconsin Woods that has no traffic connection between the two. It's a small petty issue, but I think it does confuse people at times.
Yeah, so I think most homeowners will relate to their street address more than their legal description. At the same time, and so that street, I think it's Brookside Circle is what it's called. So all those addresses, regardless of what subdivision, then they'll be Brookside Circle. The idea of the monumentation was just simply from a marketing standpoint, that we are looking to differentiate our product. And then just a quick comment on the setbacks that was mentioned. The side setbacks are really important to us because we are building at least 50% of our products are one-story product, and the little more width makes a big difference on a one-story house. Versus our competition is mostly building 2 stories with a lot of space over the garage, so they're not as concerned about that. But you know, I think there's going to be these sorts of, you know, neighborhoods where one neighborhood goes through another, and you know, but I don't know, where it's not a perfect scenario. We did bring before the engineering department an alternative that maybe connected the ensconced neighborhoods a little differently, a little more cohesively with the next phases of construction with Carlson, but that we were denied that application or that concept because it went through steep slopes. So, you know, we're just kind of, we are where we are with it. And we don't build the type of product that our competitor builds. So we wouldn't be able to be consistent with that even if we tried, so.
Here's a question for the city. Is it possible that we wouldn't, we have to build, I'm just looking at that access point. I don't know if you pull it back up there, the access point from Founder's Ridge. Cause there's really, until construction's done, there's really actually no reason why anyone needs to go that direction. So I'm just curious if like that gets, like it is today, not except to be a road on the other side of it. Like, dead ended until construction's done in that phase, cause I would assume that all the construction's gonna come down. If you go back, I think it's the one before this. Nope, keep going. It's the big neighborhood overview on it. One more.
Find one either. Look in here.
I guess you can kind of see it here. It's on my,
Yeah.
There you go.
That's probably as good as
Probably the
shot
best.
right.
yeah, okay. So you can see where there's that cul-de-sac at the bottom there, and there's that connection through, and then there's the red line, which is the new road, right? So if you go left, like that road that comes down through River Heights, that to me should be the construction, because all those houses are gonna be kind of, yep, that road kind of build, and then if you go back up where the Founders connects into Founders Ridge, nope, down a little bit. Keep going. It's right on where the road curves. I'm just gonna point.
Down.
Keep going down, keep going down,
Another.
right there.
There, up.
Up a little bit more,
Oh,
right in the corner.
There.
That road, that's the road that concerns me, because that's the road I see people coming through and cutting through construction. And so I'm just asking, like, is it something we can think about as a city, is like that road has to get built, obviously. But do we like barricade, that's not probably the right word, until it's open? Because that's the cut through that I feel happens.
I think it's something we can talk about with DR Horton, I
Yeah.
think is. the
Yeah, it
name of
is.
that
Yeah.
one. Yeah, it's something we can.
That's
bring
it.
up. I mean, it's a marketing piece to them that they're gonna wanna try and understand,
Mhm.
but from a transportation, if there's construction traffic and things, ways to route it, just keep it within the development, that makes total sense.
Yeah, like I said, I think, you know, builders have all the best intent and they hire lots of people to deliver things, and whoever the delivery driver for that day tends to either read the 30 signs on the road or take the right through the neighborhood and honk at children in a cement truck. That did happen. So, that's all. I'm just kind of just looking out for that neighborhood. The east side of that neighborhood, it was a rough, probably first month with the Scotswood. Again, I know you were responsive. I know the builder was sending reminders out and we followed through with 100 signs on the road, but so I just worry about that access point. So, okay.
I'll make a quick comment on that. I think it'll be mutually beneficial, the vehicles that are with longer trailers and that sort of thing, as we complete that loop and allow vehicles to go in and out, but the construction will be taking place simultaneously. The construction of the homes, I would predict that D.R. Horton will still be building homes as we continue to build homes. There might be a period of time where we're still building homes and they're all done building, but I don't know.
And I guess that would be the moment where the DR might have an issue with that road being quote unquote closed per se, so.
Yeah, but couldn't you put that road doesn't get opened up till something percent of it's built? I mean, I think that might be an option, but I don't know.
Cause I mean, clearly the better access for both builders is the new road. No one's gonna argue that. But what happens is you miss the turn and GPS brings you down to the neighborhood. Right? And then they're like, oh, I can just cut right through here and go through this neighborhood. And every one of those houses on that neighborhood, I think, has children under the age of 15. So it's just, that's the concern with that neighborhood. So, and again, that's not solely based on you. It's just a good opportunity for me to bring that up again because it's been a contentious issue in the neighborhood. So, but overall, I will say, I like the concept. I think it's the neighborhood in general has gotten point development around, right? Because we have it happen on both sides. And I think there's definitely the pride of that neighborhood is useful. And I live on the corner and I literally stare out my dining room window at the house with the black siding right as you come out to Scott's Woods. My wife's maybe suggested we move there and I said no. That'd be really hard to move that just that far away, but yeah, they're good looking houses and it's a nice area and a good product.
I have from my background in public safety, I am concerned about that being called Scott's Woods as well. Because as much as we teach our children to say the address, they might know the development and say Scott's Woods. And you can be off a long ways in a critical situation. I think it's hard on our public safety people when you have two developments, because we do use a lot of development names. To have one there and one in completely different area. I get that you want to be separate, totally agree. I like the idea of that, but I'm hoping that you and staff can maybe come up with a different name that can somehow tie it together, but me personally, I struggle with both of them being the Scott's Woods. It just gets to be a challenge. I've seen it over the years. We already got streets in our city that say Carver. We got a new development called Carver. That can mess up public works or public safety people sometimes. All of a sudden you hear something and you're going here and then it's like, no, that's not right.
Yeah, I will echo that with all the people I meet in that area. It's a lot of conversation like, oh, are you in the Harvest or are you down on Founder? Like street addresses are important, 100% agree with that. But I bet to my point, if I ask my kids where I live, I would go 50-50. They're gonna say in Founder's Ridge or they're gonna give them, they know their address. And it's gonna be both. And so I do think, but I think people communicate up there too. Like a lot of people say, yeah, we're in the Harvest. Okay, you're in the Harvest, we're in Founder's Ridge, right across, right? To be honest, I think sometimes it's easy to speak that way because you're being friendly, but you're not saying, hey, well, here's my exact address, right? You're still kind of keeping some of that privacy. So, I appreciate Mayor, your comments, Mayor, because that just seemed strange to me where it's an unconnected neighborhood with the same name seems. If there was a connection there, I can buy it a little bit more, but I mean, there's lots of hills and steep wooded areas separating them, as we just discussed,
And
right?
I can see it in, in the 20,000 foot, but driving it, it would be very confusing if I just worry about that. And I hope it's something you and staff can work out. Maybe it's not a big deal. Like I said, I totally understand you want to tie it, but I just always worry about that. So that's my nickel.
Two other things that were brought up. One was the rear lot lines and the idea of the conservation easements. Can I address that?
Sure.
Okay. We did talk about at the planning commission meeting, our engineer has done mini plats with similar concerns in other communities and had suggested a neighborhood information sheet that buyers are required to sign. That would also be recorded, sale of each property. In addition to the conservation easements being on the plat and recorded, in addition to signage. Our desire was with the first ensconced woods, we gave the city a lot of land, but that created lots that had very small acreages. And so we're trying to get the full value out of these lots by extending the lot lines out. I made up a word called effective acreage in the first plat, but it has been a limiting factor. So we would like to not just simply give all that land to the city. I have we met last week with the planning staff and we're talking about doing some compromising, some trading and straightening out lines and that sort of thing. So.
I'm just gonna say that I have to take staff's recommendation. I mean, I would say work with staff if they think it's a feasible thing. That's fine. But if it's not, I mean, we have to look at it, I mean, I'm sure you're aware of this. We have steep slopes everywhere. We can't change one rule for one developer and not for the other. So one thing that I've always felt good about in my time here is we've been consistent. And I hope that we don't change from that because then people understand where we're coming from because that's the way we've kind of done it. It's hard to go willy-nilly different ways and say everything's good when we're done because it's not. It always comes back and bites you as soon as you start making exceptions for one and not the other. But if if you guys can agree on something, from my point, and I'm sure the rest of my colleagues up here, we're good with that.
Yeah. And it's not a code thing. It's.
Right. But it's something that each and every city sets up, and it depends and, we've had a house sitting right on the edge of one that put in 2014 that we had to shore up. So we do have concerns about things like that. So we are going to look at it closely but like I said, you'd have to work with staff and.
Getting to work with staff.
Yep. I mean, this is like we all know this is concept. This is first getting it out there and seeing how you can make it work. So I think you just got to work on it the next couple phases. And I truly hope that you look at possibly renaming. That's my personal, I guess I can't require it officially, but that would be my strong recommendation from a public safety aspect.
There was one other question, but if it's not important.
Asked one earlier.
It was about the marketing.
Oh, yeah, about marketing, about saying about the steep slopes that it can't be, you can only do this and do that.
Or it's about the ghost plat.
Oh,
If they
and the
knew there
ghost,
was gonna-
and the
yes,
ghost
yeah.
plats.
That's what it was. Yeah.
And ghost plats.
So we did, I don't know if it was in the packet because I don't see your packet, but we did submit to staff, what sort of.
We have it here. It shows it here.
Sort of
My question.
Yeah.
My question is when you're selling lot 14, I don't know what it is. There's lot 9. Who's ever marketing your lots, are they telling them that?
Mhm.
We've been through the same issue with lighted ball fields. They all of a sudden, they never told anybody. And the next thing you know, lighted ball fields go up and this room's full of people madder than get out, but it's. So I just, we've talked about this in almost every development, that there are certain conditions like that please market them that way. Again, we're asking, but I think for your own peace of mind, I hope that you feel that that's the way to market it, because
Sure.
that's the way it's
I have
gotta be.
exhibits that we've been sharing with, we can be more diligent to make sure that everyone sees those. They were shared at the
I
neighborhood
don't,
meetings.
you sell your own, or do you have
Yeah.
different real, so you sell your own?
Yeah.
I feel better about that. I mean, the fact that you're selling your own lots, you know what you have there. It's just if you put them out for anybody to purchase and buy, that's where I think we run into to issues. And I mean, we've even had it in with the national.
Mhm.
I've been in your new neighborhood. I think it's great what you're doing. I love the idea that people can customize a home. They don't have a lot of options for that anymore. So, I like your concept of what you're doing. This gives people a lot of choices that they might not have with a national builder. So, like I said, I'm all in favor of it. Just a couple things, marketing and possibly the name. I struggle with that. We had 2 Valley View roads in here. And our public safety doesn't know which one. One might have a two, or 3 letters, the other one has 4. But and I was in the fire department. We lost a patient because it went the wrong way. So
Yeah.
that is a big concern to me when they're not connected and they're 2 with the same name. So I hope you look at that. Said, I like that you're separating off your own parcel to say this is us. But hopefully with a different name. How about Ryland?
Staff.
Ryland's Woods.
Well, it might be Carlson something if we were gonna change it.
Or let's go open the thesaurus, which is a hard fun word to say under the record. Thesaurus, there, it's got the second time. What's another word for ensconced right now? That's all good stuff.
But you mentioned you have like a buyer information sheet that you would provide and have the buyer sign off on as part of like their, included as part of their title packet, right? So, maybe information like the ghost plat or something like ghost plat, but also subject to change, because a lot of times people see something that's maybe a ghost plat from like 30 years ago. And then of course, when the development actually does happen, it's reconfigured and everything gets totally bent out of shape because, well, it's not what was on that plat. This is what was approved 30 years ago. Well, and it's, we're all long gone, but, I certainly don't want that falling onto, the next council at that time. And then they got to deal with like a bunch of angry neighbors saying that you didn't build this or you need to build a certain way. And that developer's got to deal with like a big old headache, right? So, but even to acknowledge that there's going to be homes and that plan is subject to change back there, but something is there. And I think, you've probably been in the situation of receiving the land and the neighbors expecting something different because they weren't set up to understand that what you were going to do was subject to change based on today's situation, right? So.
Yeah, so we'll work on that, but there is no layer. We meet with the customer direct, so.
So the better transparency and also something that can be included that will go with the title, that with the property would be great.
Yeah, we can work on our disclosures. Thanks for that suggestion.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Like I said, I just hope you understand where I'm kind of coming from on that. Like I said, I get that you're marketing wise and all that, but I just really am concerned about that. Like I said, hopefully you and staff can come up with something that makes sense. So,
Staff.
perfect. Thank you. Any other questions? I don't think so. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for staff? I guess if not, like I said, this is the concept. This is where we come lay it out. Get ideas, get the, and then the next phase is really work tight on the critical stuff, and we'll see what happens at the next phase. So
When's the projected time you're looking at building? What's your ballpark?
yeah, you have to come back up, otherwise I can't hear.
Sorry, should ask a little earlier.
So I did mention earlier that our goal is to get all entitlements this year. And we possibly would build roads, streets and utilities this year. but it's 50-50. It's also based on, we're a small builder, small development company, and we do have a partner in the neighborhood. You might have noticed McDonald Construction. It's also based on sales. So I would say it's 50-50, whether it's late in the construction season this year or next year. And then the construction of the homes would be immediately after that.
So Ryland's gonna make that all the way back to there this year? You know?
You mean D.R. Horton?
Or D.R. Horton, I'm sorry.
It's all under construction, so.
Yes.
I mean, I know they're there, but I don't know how far they are back there. You can't. So will they make this whole circle? So it'll be two dead ends and then you have to do the remainder of it. Okay,
Yeah.
that helps me
It will
understand.
be, it would have to be, if it doesn't happen this year, the grading would have to happen at a different time. So that piece of it factored in with not just the building aspect of it, it would be physical grading of the property that would have to be accounted for.
Okay, that helps me while you're saying that, because I was assuming they were just gonna come in, just do it all at once, and then you guys would just do the building there, but I don't know, okay, got it.
We're the developer and the builder, so, yeah.
Got it. All right, awesome.
Okay, thanks.
Pleasures.
Motion. Make a motion to adopt resolution 2024-18. Approval for the concept plan for Wisconsin second edition.
I'll second that motion.
All right, so I have a motion by Councilmember Juan, second by Councilmember Gra, adopting resolution 2024 -18, approval of concept plan for Scott's second edition. 3675 Big Woods Boulevard. Discussion. We had a good discussion so far, so hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. Motion carries. Thanks, gentlemen. All right, moves us to, 8B. Adopt ordinances number 1042 and 1043, approving the zoning ordinance amendments to non-conforming structures and uses of non-conforming lots of record and variances for the city of Chaska.
Mayor and Councilor, this item is in reference to the zoning code audit that we're currently going through. And we're bringing back these two specific ones because they're ones that we saw a lot over the last couple of years and felt like it would be good for us to get these dealt with, specifically making sure, even though we've performed with variances and non-conforming lots as state statute requires, our language in our ordinance has not been written that way. And so it's really sort of trying to deal with these two items that we've seen a lot, but it also give you sort of a preview of what you'll expect to see as we go into the future, as we come back with different things from the audit process in there. So with that, I'm not sure if it's Liz or Ash. It's Liz. Liz will be presenting this tonight.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. We have a zoning ordinance amendment in front of you this evening for the sections that Matt noted, which are non-conforming structures and uses, non-conforming lots of record, and variances. So Matt kind of gave you a little bit of a background, but specifically kind of dating back to 2022, we had several land use applications come through that made the city and staff aware of multiple issues within our zoning code in terms of processing some of the development applications. So at that time, we understood that there was a need for a comprehensive review and update to the zoning code. And so we initiated that process with HKGI, who we've been working with for the last year or so, to go through and do a zoning audit of our current zoning code. We did hold a joint work session with both the Planning Commission and City Council on July 31st of last year, which looked at or initiated the scope of work that we were laying out for the zoning audit. And since that time, the city has been working with HKGI to look over our zoning code and establish basically phases and in the way we're going to be approaching and implementing the code updates through the year. So this is kind of that first go ahead at some of the updates that we'll be doing, but we will be seeing a lot more as the year progresses. We have kind of different sections to be looking at through the months here that will be involving City Council and Planning Commission via work sessions and the like to kind of get through those updates in those different sections as we proceed. So those will be in the next couple months here and through the subsequent months of this year that we're going to be looking at that.
Liz, if I may, if we make these corrections and stuff, and we had issues that in the past that we followed what we did, and now we bring this in, is there any way they can come back and say, well, now it says this and we could do that? Or is it based on the
We acted
ordinance?
on state statute before.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't written that way in our ordinance. And so what this does is it's bringing that ordinance up to what we actually did. So to
You
get to
said that
your,
earlier about.
yeah, so to get
my
to your
head's spinning.
question, somebody couldn't come back and say, well, you did that wrong. We actually did it right, but our ordinance was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The state statute would have preempted the ordinance at the time, and so the correct way to do it was the way that the city had been using the state statute, rather than the ordinance.
Well, if we'd been doing it and we're gonna just get it in our codes, that's easier.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
just
in
that we
essence-
were reversing how we
Yeah.
were doing
In
it.
essence, what we're doing tonight is having you guys adopt in our city ordinance what we've been doing for a practice for ever.
You said we've been doing that.
Yeah.
Sitting here, I'm thinking about this and thinking, how's this gonna come back and bite us? But, okay.
Your glass half empty, love to hear that. Yeah, don't you tonight, don't you?
I thought about a couple projects, maybe.
Mhm. So the current request involves a couple different zoning ordinance amendments. One is to the section of non-conforming structures and uses. Another is to the section of non-conforming lots of record, and then another amendment to the variances section. So we consider the updates that are coming in front of you as kind of smaller lifts or what we consider non-discretionary because we're aligning with state statute. Also, we're hoping to clear up some confusing language in the code as well, so that, again, these ordinances line up with how we've been practicing things and how we've been using the state statute regulations to look at these various items. So getting into non-conforming structures and uses, I'm not going to get too into the details and weeds here, but happy to answer any questions. The bigger changes that have occurred within this section are providing inclusionary language and also clarifying language regarding the restoration of non-conforming structures and uses, the maintenance of non-conforming structures and uses, and the section that deals with changes of non-conforming structures and uses. So again, most of these are changes to align with state statute language, and some of them are changes to make the language more clear as we interpret the code. I'm not sure if you have any questions related to this section, otherwise kind of move on here. Non-conforming lots of record. So when we're speaking of non-conforming lots of record, we're talking about lots that fall below size requirements for the zoning district that they're in. So this section would apply to those types of lots and how those would be treated. And the new ordinance laid out in front of you splits that section into two different sections. So non-conforming lots of record, and then a second section for non-conforming lots of record that are in a shoreland area. So there's two different sections in terms of whether it's a shoreland lot or it's not, in terms of how you treat those non-conforming lots. And just to note, we currently have the section on non-conforming lots of record. So the section related to non-conforming lots of record in shoreland is a completely new section, but that again is pulled completely from state statute and basically verbatim, based on what state statute requires. And then the other amendment refers to variances. The biggest change within this amendment is changing from undue hardship to practical difficulty. So you probably are familiar with the terminology of undue hardship when we're reviewing and granting variances. In 2011, legislature changed the terminology for granting variances to practical difficulty. The difference between the two I have listed on the slide here. So undue hardship was defined as the property in question cannot be put to reasonable use if used under conditions allowed by the official controls. Practical difficulty is defined as the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by an official control. So there's kind of a slight change in the terminology of that and kind of just breaking it down to simplicity. The way we perceive practical difficulty is seeing it as more permissive than undue hardship. I did want to use an example scenario just to give you the difference between the two. Just because it kind of helps put it into real form, and not that this is a catch-all scenario necessarily, but just something to kind of break it down easier in terms of how each of them is utilized. So the scenario that we have put together is a property owner wants to build an addition on their detached garage, but it doesn't meet setbacks, so you have a non-conforming building there. So they're basically asking for a variance from the setbacks for that detached garage. So in the instance of using undue hardship, the question that you're asking towards that variance request is the existing property being used reasonably already without the variance? In this instance, you could argue yes, because they currently have a detached garage. If an alternative reasonable use is available of the property, so if they're already using the property in a reasonable way, the variance, no variance could be granted under undue hardship. So it's kind of a hard and fast rule of if you're already utilizing the property in a reasonable way, it's not really grounds for a variance request. So there is a larger burden of proof on the property owner under the undue hardship analysis. And then with practical difficulty, the question that you're asking for the request is the request for the variance reasonable? So are they asking for something that's reasonable in the sense of using their property? So in this instance, you could argue yes, the request for a garage addition is a reasonable ask. As long as they're showing that they can meet the variance criteria, and we go through that evaluation and show that the variance criteria can be met, then they would have a grounds for a variance in that instance. But again, this is just a simplistic approach at kind of looking at the difference. It doesn't necessarily mean just because you want to have an addition to a detached garage that doesn't meet setbacks automatically gives you the grounds for a variance. You still have to go through that criteria to evaluate if it's meeting all of it to grant it. In both scenarios, the criteria that's used is the same. So that isn't changing with the change from undue hardship to practical difficulties. So that all stays the same. And I just want to note too that this change to practical difficulty is not an overnight change. It has been something that we've been using since as early as 2022 when we had a variety of variances come in. So us kind of using that same analysis that we're putting into our code right now, it doesn't effectively change kind of how city is practicing evaluating variances at this very moment. So in essence, we don't see this change as a big change to the city's code for that reason. So in conclusion, we're asking for two different motions this evening. One is to adopt ordinance number 1042, which is approving the zoning ordinance amendment to section 15.04.050, non-conforming structures and uses, and to section 15.04.060, non-conforming lots of record. And then the second motion would be to adopt ordinance number 1043, which is approving the zoning ordinance amendment to section 15.08.080 regarding variances. Happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, the draft ordinances are in your packet this evening as well.
Questions? I think this is more of making you guys be able to, that we're actually doing what we're supposed to be doing and not coming up with something else, so.
Well, that we're able to share with people what we're doing already.
What it says.
Yeah.
Right.
So one quick question. So, I mean, you mentioned earlier that this is basically just copying what's in state statute, right? I mean, it's the same, so that way it's the same. Is there a reason why we have to copy into ordinance versus just saying refer to state statute? Because it's like the state changes the statute again and they change it to a different definition or modify it, tweak it, or maybe even tweak a couple of words so it's barely even worth a mention in the league's newsletter, right? Stuff like that will get lost, and then we could be doing it again wrong because we just didn't know, because we didn't update our ordinance, and now we're off again, right? I mean, just wondering how do we, and so how, A, why not just refer to the state ordinance? And B, how do we make sure we keep it current? Because that's sort of the problem that's we're fixing now. So how do we make sure we don't have that problem in the future?
I would say one benefit of including the language within our ordinance, in the event that we had to issue a citation, we have to issue it based on an ordinance number and not a Minnesota state
We don't have the
statute.
ability to enforce state statute, but we would have the ability to enforce our own code of ordinances.
Mhm.
Gotcha. Okay, well, that
Pretty
makes
much
sense.
answered that.
That answers that question, yep. Okay, so
And then you can answer the other question.
Well, when state statute changes in things like variances and nonconformities and other zoning topics, for geeks like us, that's something that
It's pretty well known.
yeah, I mean, that's something that gets talked about. So I would be surprised if we were to, miss that sort of a thing.
So basically, it sounds like the practice is just being more aggressive about making sure the updates are applied as we go.
I think that would be the change in practice. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
and the league actually does a pretty good job of doing an annual. And I know typically city attorneys will go to those two to say, here's the things that are being discussed. One of them we're going to discuss tonight. And here are the things after session that have been passed that we need to look at our ordinances on. So.
Those sounds like super fun events to go. to.
Oh, there, well, just go there. Okay, thank you.
One thing, if it's all right, this is a different similar topic, but I just want to give you a little bit of a preview on what to expect as we're going forward this year, and we're looking at updates to the ordinances, to the zoning code in general, and applying what came out of that audit last year. So like Liz mentioned, we're starting with the things that we have sort of called non-discretionary, aligned with state statute. So that's why I had these items come in front of you tonight. And the next piece that we're going to be taking a look at is our shoreland district, because that's really governed by state statute and guidance from the DNR. So that's something that I know Christoph and Liz have already kind of started to dabble in a little bit. We'll be diving into that now that we're bringing this in front of you tonight. From there, we'll start to look at things that are, as I think, of a little bit more discretionary. So there are things that, although there's case law in place and some, provisions in state statute, there's a lot more discretion leeway for the city council, to take direction or provide direction. And those would be things like the special regulations, our planned development districts, and our subdivision regulations. And we're going to take them in that, our intent is to take them in that order, because those special regulations are really kind of those fundamental items that lay out those things that we expect to see in a development on a typical basis, things like setbacks and, architectural guidelines, landscaping, those sorts of things. And then our planned development districts are kind of built on top of that, right? So we would look to make sure that a development is meeting those those special regulations and use the planned development districts to evaluate, when we want to try and, do something a little bit different from that. And then, those subdivision regulations, to some extent kind of stand on their own. But it all needs to work together at the end of the day. So we'll take them kind of in chunks. With the idea being that we would have a joint work session with planning commission and council for each topic.
For each discretionary item.
For each discretionary item.
Yeah.
So one for special regs, one for planned development districts, and then one focused on subdivision. And allow for that, feedback between, staff and our consultants at Poisington who are helping us, and council and planning commission, so we get some direction. And then that would then allow us to hopefully, have enough information to go forward and draft those changes. And then, bring them forward for your review. Right now, our intention is that we would work through that drafting throughout the year. And then as we get towards the end of the year and we've completed drafting in its entirety, we would bring that final code amendment in front of you in its entirety. And the reason for that is if, for example, we were to go just forward and do special regulations and amend those and change those and not change anything else, all these things kind of are woven together right now. So we would end up with a code in the interim that's kind of unwieldy and difficult to navigate. And therefore difficult for staff to work with as we're actively working on, planning applications right now as we speak, right? So, so that's our intent and how we're expecting the questions or concerns around that. We did meet with Kevin Wright today to talk about standing up a web page on our website that will provide some information around this topic so that as we're moving forward and there's questions in the community, we've got that resource built to refer people to so they can get more information.
That's a good idea. I like that.
Yeah, because I was gonna say if we've talked that we needed to go through these for a long time and now that we're doing the audit, let's make sure if we're seeing big changes that we get it out. I mean, I don't know if anyone's gonna read it at the time but at least the effort's been there that we put it out and that it's available if somebody wants to check it, I think it's.
One, it's easy to get the format down when we're dealing with these non-discretionary type of things, so that when we do start to get into discretionary items, we already sort of have that format down.
I do like the idea of getting input because I think that there's a lot of different ways to look at some of these things, right? And, whether, like one of the things we were talking about a while back was, like the amount of land that was, to be set aside based on, like square footage of the building versus, footprint versus, all these different factors. And some of those can be in conflict sometimes. So to straighten it out, then which one are we picking, right? And I think that, it has a number of different implications. And so they can be kind of, even that one subject can be kind of sticky in itself and say, well, what does it mean for different types of buildings and using different ways of looking at it? And I think that those are really healthy discussions, but I think the broader the groups are, the broader the inputs are, it gives us a better foundation in which to make a long-term decision, because it's something that these things have a lot of implications and a lot of them we can't see, even if we have like a group of 20 people involved, right? That's a lot of people, but there's a lot more different ways of looking at than just those 20 probably. So I think that's a good thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else? All right, with that, so we're gonna need two motions separately. We're gonna have adopting ordinance 1042. And then we'll do the 1043. So is there someone that's willing to make a motion? Well, is there any further discussion? Sorry. I didn't think there was. So, all right, with that, is there someone willing to make a motion for ordinance 1042? I'll go through the whole
Sure,
thing.
I'll do 1042. I'll make a motion.
So I have a motion by Councilmember Wong,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hatfield. And that's to adopt ordinance 1042, approving the zoning ordinance amendment that would modify section 15.04.0050, non-conforming structures and uses, and section 15.04.0 .060 non-conforming lots of record. So that is our motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Post same sign. Motion carries. The next one is to adopt ordinance. Someone willing to make?
Motion to adopt ordinance 1043.
Motion by Councilmember Hatfield,
Second.
second by Councilmember McGraw, adopting ordinance 1043, approving the zoning ordinance amendment that would modify section 15.08.080 variances. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Post same sign. Motion carries. All right, we're gonna move to item C, which is adopt resolution 2024-16. This is a public improvement hearing on the northeast collector of southwest area.
Mayor and council members, Matt's putting up a exhibit here now. One of the things that we have never had in the city of Chaska is a collector or arterial road on the west side of the city. So if you think about on the east side of the city, we have Audubon that goes north-south. In the middle of the city, we have Highway 41 that goes north-south. But on the west end of the city, we have Clover Ridge Drive that gets down to Engler, but then that's about it. So we've slowly been building sections of that collector over time. We started with building the first phases of Savannah Way coming up between the Harvest neighborhoods, and then also built Chaska Creek Parkway up by the industrial park up by Engler Boulevard where that arrow is there. We worked over the last summer to build the section between those two green dots, and right now we have one just very small section of Savannah Road that isn't built, that once that's built, we will have our collector road on the west side of the community. And so that's basically what we're talking about tonight, is a project to finish off Savannah Way that would bring it down to Old Creek Road and then carry it up and basically and I'm probably a good example because I live in the Clover Ridge neighborhood. I can take Clover Ridge Drive, and instead of having to turn on Engler and go all the way to 41 and come downtown, I'll be able to go right across Clover Ridge Drive on Creek Way and then down Savannah Way and right into downtown Chaska. So it really replaces sort of, in the past, people used to sort of use Old Creek Road as sort of a shortcut. Even though I timed it once, it wasn't a shortcut, it's actually longer than to go the 41 route.
More fun.
But it wasn't. But this is a section of road that's missing, that's needed to make that full connection to go north-south. So we are planning on doing that this summer. This is something that we have collected transportation area charges from the developer to pay for, as well as municipal state aid dollars. Matt can go over sort of the spreadsheet that sort of talks about what the costs are and what we'd see the schedule be for this project this summer.
Yeah, just to reiterate, where we're at for this summer. The section shown in yellow map, that's what we're talking about. Finishing off project that started in 2017 is when we initially built the first section of road. Total project costs we're considering for this year's project, street improvements estimated around 1.9 million. Sanitary sewer improvements, 275, water main improvements, 412, storm sewer, around 500. Total estimated project costs are around 3.1. Just to paint a picture of, some of the elements that are, that I just mentioned, particularly on the utility side. Matt had mentioned the connectivity to the street component, but from a utility side, this is what I would call is a major trunk connection to our water main system. So Southwest Chaska, everything that's currently east of 212 is served off of a single feed. I know some of the folks that live in the neighborhood have experienced that toughness of, growth and area growth and shutdowns that have happened throughout. This project will provide a secondary connection to all of the neighborhoods that provide a trunk system connection coming up. So what you see here in blue, it also is a major trunk sewer lateral extension. Previously, part of the area development, there was a temporary situation with a lift station that served area development. This project now converts the entire growth area south or north of County Road 44, south of Creek Road, to a gravity sewer system, which is traditional still. So been in the plan, been in the works. This is a big component of converting everything back and really tying together what I would call is the northeast quadrant of Southwest Chaska. There was some storm sewer that I mentioned. Obviously, if folks have seen Driven Creek Road, you can see that there's regional ponds that were constructed as part of Creek Road. Those were done in advance of this project, just simply from maximizing the feasibility and the cost for grading work. So what you can see is we do have, what's shown here is more of a trunk storm sewer system that comes down and provides the water quality and treatment down into before entering into the West Creek ravine system. So those are kind of the major building blocks of what we're talking about on the project. Matt mentioned previously, how the city plans to go out and with all of these Southwest Chaska projects, as we build the collector roads and things, the improvements are initially financed. The street improvements, as Matt mentioned, the reimbursement tools there are through municipal state aid, which is reimbursement over time through state aid funds, combined with a transportation assessment that is captured by area development. Those are the funding sources for the sewer and the storm sewer. There are some two utilities, sewer and water. Those are reimbursed through trunk utility fees that are collected through area development and then reimbursed over time as development occurs. It's part of the model that we talk about for how improvements and things are both paid for and reimbursed for Southwest Chaska. So I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't actually those things coming together. In terms of project schedule this summer, we started a project website kind of messaging the early onset of the purpose and need, the reasonings why the collector road and what it's serving, and then kind of teed it up for that next set of the next message that would come in that would say, construction. We would plan for a early May, kind of a tentative early May award. Hopefully we get into the good bidding climate and we'll get good bids, which now is the right time to be out. So council will see something here in the next 2 sessions to actually authorize advertising for bids. And so that puts us really into that early spring, good construction season where we can get after it and then potentially with the intent to open the road to traffic this fall. There would be some things that happen, final paving that has to happen in 2025, but the project is proposed to open by the end of this year. Just to, I hate to beat a dead horse, but this is one of the things when we talk about transportation system. Matt had talked about collector roads. The intent, and with when you think about our collector roads in town, folks like to resonate names like Country Mart, Bavaria, McKnight, those are kind of what we call as our collector roads, central core, serve the primary regional destinations for the point of serve and regional points of destination for those major transit traffic generations, right? It's gonna be a change for the folks that are out in the neighborhood. By making this connection, it allows that new gateway into downtown, really replaces that section of Creek Road that we had the discussion on several years ago about making those regional traffic or creating that local connection in the downtown. But just to, this is a map that I continue to show folks, and this is right directly out of our comprehensive plan that has our comprehensive transportation system of Southwest Chaska. We're finishing the northeast quadrant, the gap that serves kind of what's now considered as just the residential unit, but there is a number of collector roads that will be tied in as a part of this. And just so that, anybody who is watching and those types of things, if they understand the road, this type of road serves a particular purpose, which is making sure that we're moving traffic, and that allows points of destination for regional trips between county highways. Any questions? Happy to answer them.
Questions for Matt? I think this is a connection that, I think we've all been kind of waiting. That's kind of that final piece of the puzzle. Me, it seems like it's lasted forever to get there, but there's light at the end of the tunnel now, so it's good. I think it's good that we have something on the west to get around if what happened. So I look forward to this connection. I think it'll be a great thing.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out, just for those maybe looking or less familiar with that area too, that road is designed to be wider. As you said, collector, there's no access from houses on that road, right? You see backs of houses, but you don't see access. I think it's an important distinction, because if you're just looking at the map, you're like, wow, that's a collector road right through a residential area, but it is well designed in that fact. Like I said, there's no access points onto the road, driveways, that type of thing. And it's wider than your typical road, which I think is just important to point out.
And also, if I'm not mistaken, like by having that finished, it'll also provide faster fire response for those residents in those neighborhoods there.
Yes,
Probably, yeah.
it will create better traffic patterns for public safety,
Yeah, for sure.
or an added new one.
Yeah, and new one, yeah, for sure. And definitely from the fire station for sure.
Mhm.
So good thing all around.
It just, it's not only for public safety, public works can move about better. Everybody
Yep.
has that ability to move about better
Yep.
with another connector over
Yeah,
here.
a little better shopping access or access for downtown for residents and, Clover in all of the, the Clover Ridge neighborhoods, so. Yep. Yep.
All right,
Good
so this is a public hearing. Okay, so there's no further questions up here? Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and open the public hearing up at 8:33. And I don't think there's anyone here because there's no one sitting in the audience to talk for it or against it. So with that, I'm gonna warp to 8:34 and close the public hearing. And now I'd look for a motion.
I'll make a motion
Okay,
for resolution 2024-16.
all right. So I have a motion by Councilmember Hatfield.
I'll second.
Wait, was that
Second.
the right number? Sorry.
2016. Right?
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you had it. I was wondering. Okay. So again, this is adopting resolution 2024-16, ordering improvements for the Northeast Collector in Southwest Chaska Savannah Way Phase 2, and authorizing the preparation of construction documents. Further discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Post same sign. Motion carries. All right, we move on to D, and that's adopt resolution 2024-15, accepting the feasibility report for 2024 street and utility Reconstruction improvements, calling for a public improvement hearing and authorizing preparation of construction documents.
Mayor and Councilmember, even though the two items D and E are separated, the presentation that Nate's about ready to give actually goes through both of them. You guys, hopefully you guys will be prepared after his presentation to take action on both D and E's.
We'll find out.
And we hope.
We'll see what I come up with.
Patiently waiting.
Yeah. Good luck to me. Okay. Yeah, so Mayor and council members, this is the downtown streetscape project, is what the bulk of this will be on, but also the regional trail project is at the tail end of this presentation. So looking at timelines and kind of breaking down how this presentation will proceed here. This year in downtown, we're looking at the underpass, landscaping, paseos, and public parking as a continuation of the construction that occurred in 2024.
Telling me that tarp
I'm
and the
sorry.
rocks isn't what was planned?
Was that?
You're telling me that the black tarp and the rocks ever wasn't what was
I
planned?
did have someone tell me they liked that.
Oh, did they?
They liked the big rocks, they
It's an
said.
industrial look,
Okay.
right?
Maybe they meant on the bridge.
Probably on the bridge.
They must have meant the bridge, right? Okay.
That portion feels a little more complete with the rocks. No, the intent is not that the tarps is the finished product, although if there's a preference to that, I guess we could adjust. But so you'll see, that construction piece completed over the course of this next upcoming summer. Depending on what the weather gives us, hopefully we can get.
That's already
started
bid,
sooner than
that's
later.
all part of the original.
That's all part of that project, yeah.
That's why there's no bidding on this piece of that.
Yep. Then you've got the Minnesota River Bluffs Regional Trail project. So that's basically taking that underpass that was built or, will be finished this summer and then connecting both directions to Carver to the west and then to the Minnesota River Bluffs Regional Trail that exists today through the levee system there. And that will occur this summer. With that looking to complete as we get towards into the fall. And then we also have, in addition to that, the signage and amenity package, which is on top of the construction work that was done last year and will be completed this year. So that signage and amenities are details that I'll be walking through this presentation. So to outline some of the zones of the project as we're thinking about them and kind of reiterate what I just walked through. This orange line represents the trail connection, both to the west towards Carver and then to the east as well. The green being that zone where on 41 where you would see the plantings occurring and the some of the signage going. And then the blue likewise, just on 61 and 41, that landscaping piece being completed along with irrigation and some signage. And then you see the parking lots and the paseo on the east side of downtown, that network proceeding. So just a few visuals of what you'll expect some of these things to look like. So this is depicting the landscaping that would go into the planter boxes that are already established. So, putting something where the black tarps are today.
So before we get too far and I forget, is this stuff pretty hardy with all the salt that happens in these? And then are they gonna be something that grows so big that they block visions of pedestrians and stuff? Seems like architects have a tendency to overplant and plant things that get too tall and obscure somebody coming from the left to the right on our screen here.
We've been taking a lot of what we've learned in landscaping throughout the city. And I think, County Road 44 is maybe the most recent, Big Woods Boulevard, where we did a lot of landscaping in the medians and trying to apply that to what we're doing going forward. And so we're working with Public Works and the landscapers are working directly with Brian Jung in particular to make sure what we're doing is going to be maintainable and hopefully viable.
Just what he said is exactly why I don't worry about it.
And that's fine, as long as we're looking at it, because
There's of the plant selection, there's not a single plant that Brian doesn't approve on the plan.
okay, Cause I mean, I just look at 61 and trying to get a vehicle out there, and a lot of times it's summer kids out there. And I'm always concerned about that, and that we take that into account as we move forward. And thankfully, you said we've learned from past, so that's good. So
Yep.
appreciate that.
There's another rendering that kind of helps to show how the banner poles will be used, and that's something that Julie Grove is working with the Downtown Business Alliance on to come up with some design ideas and move forward with something
Are
that
they just gonna say like Chaska, or are they gonna have?
Elise, you may know more about that.
Yeah, it's meant to be real general. It's something that our electric department, who has been responsible for putting up banners in the past, is it's tight to get those banners up. So ideally, the ones in the middle would stay year round, but there would be opportunities to put more seasonal banners on the ones that are on along the sidewalks.
Okay. Good.
And we've got this is a map to show the wayfinding signage. So all these different locations here are areas where you can expect to see some signage being placed throughout down. And so, but what you'll see is a mix of different types of signs throughout. You've got your entry sign right here. So these are much larger signs that are intended for gateway points to the downtown, to really serve as a kind of a welcome and more oriented towards vehicles as they're coming in and they're approaching from the south across the bridge, as they're coming from the north on 41 and kind of getting towards Fireman's Park. Those are the two primary locations for those sort of signs. These directional flag signs are located kind of throughout downtown, but mostly at key intersections to point users, both pedestrians and vehicles, to the nearest destinations that are proximate to that, any given location of that sign. All of these signs will point people to the nearest public parking location. So we wanted to make sure that that was incorporated in a theme throughout all of them. But these directional signs in particular, they will change based on the location because it's really focused on kind of the few blocks proximate to that specific spot. Then you've got parking signs. So the parking signs will be uniform throughout, and they'll be at the entrance points and to all public parking lots in downtown. And that's really the sole intent of those, is to make it clear where public parking is available. The Paseo archways will be part of it, and those will be located in these areas where you see the asterisks. So those really serve to indicate where those pedestrian access points to the Paseo network exist, and welcome people into those, invite them to use them as they're navigating north south on the east side of downtown.
So they don't just look like a scary alley.
Right. One component of that, and part of the scariness is these, or maybe eliminating the scariness, hopefully, are these string lights that'll be part of that. So those will be at the kind of caps of each of the Paseo entry points to provide that additional lighting and hopefully make it feel a little bit more inviting.
So just as an example, like this one's like is right, if I'm not mistaken, like one right in the middle there is like right just south of City Square Park is where like the back of La Hermosa is, right? And there's currently, it's in between La Hermosa and
Hanson's.
and Von Hanson's, and there's two driveways like right now. That's like one driveway in and one driveway out.
Yep.
And so it sounds like we'd have to reconfigure so this one of them's like a pedestrian walkway, and the arch would go over the pedestrian walkway, or it would go over where the
This
driveway
particular
is.
section that you're talking about, that section of alleyway will be closed to vehicle traffic.
Okay.
And the vehicle pathway is my mouse translating to the screen there?
Yep.
So it'll effectively, if you're driving in, you would go through the public parking lot that was acquired right here, and then utilize the alleyway system, and then you come out the parking lot that exists. Yep. With each
Are they
caps
one way?
area. No, it won't be one way, it'll be two.
Huh?
It'll be two-way through there. Yep.
It's okay, so it's two-way, but you're.
He asked one way and you said, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I didn't think they were one way.
So
Yeah,
while you
maybe
will
two-way.
still be able to like drive, it is kind of encouraging it to be more pedestrian.
Right, yep,
Right.
it's more pedestrian oriented. There's segments of the Paseo that can be driven on, but they're limited in extent. And it's designed in a way that no one's gonna be able to pick up any speed, unless you're
That's
really
good.
doing something wrong, yeah.
So assuming like the archway, so the archway in that case, using it as an example, would traverse actually over an area that's part driveway,
No,
correct? Or is this particular, or this
No.
one you're saying is not?
it does, they don't exit onto a drive section until the south end of the parking lot.
Okay.
Yep. So the archways will be for areas that are purely pedestrian. There won't be any driving through the archways.
So
That's
regardless
good.
of how it's configured today, we configure some way which there's a pedestrian section, then there's driveway sections. So anytime you see a gateway there, you don't have to worry about, there's no vehicles there.
Correct. Yep.
Does that impede any of our drive delivery access for any of those businesses?
No. No, we've worked with the businesses on
We have-
deliveries and
oh, good.
understanding how
Okay.
those logistics work. And we've come up with approaches that they'll still be able to get their goods
Okay.
delivered. Let's see, a couple other things. So the heritage wall and column panels, there's a number of heritage walls and columns that exist downtown already, and they've been being built as the downtown street reconstruction and streetscaping has occurred. So a lot, and those columns have designated spots within them for these panels to be placed. And so over the last, I'd say year or so, Liz has been working with Kevin Wright and the Historics Center or the History Center to determine some photos that are appropriate for these locations. And the idea is that by and large, these photos speak to what the specific location used to look like, or individuals who maybe owned or operated within the buildings that exist today, those historic buildings. And then those panels will incorporate QR codes on them. And Kevin is building out web pages that those QR codes would bring you to help tell that story in more detail for people who are interested in that. So this will weave into the walking tour, the history walking tour that we have downtown, and kind of bolster that a little bit more and give people access to even more information and stories about the history of downtown. So that's the columns and panels. And then we also have heritage kiosks, which are designated locations, these Ks as you see them here. And then on either end of the underpass for the train. They're four-sided kiosks. One panel, one of the larger panels would be utilized for a downtown map to help people navigate downtown. These are purely, pedestrian oriented signs. And then the other sides would be continue to tell the streets, historic stories for downtown. So it becomes a mix of, complementing the heritage wall columns and the panels that are going to be put up on those, but then also stories in a little bit more detail because they're bigger panels to work with. The kiosks will have themes to them depending on their location downtown. So this kiosk tells the story of Second Street, for example. The kiosks that are up here are telling a little bit more about the city's industrial and commercial history. So things like the sugar beet industry, the brick industry, the rail that used to serve this area. Those sorts of themes are what you'd expect to see in those areas. And then you got the kiosk that's along, proximate to the river. We'll talk about the river. So we're not that creative. We're just going to talk about what's in front of you.
Wow.
In a creative way, yes.
Very novel idea.
Yeah. So that's the idea with those.
So a lot of this is happening on the east side.
Mhm.
When we get to hopefully doing City Square West and stuff, would the intent be to emulate some of the archways and stuff on the side? Okay.
Yeah, yep, that's the intent. And some of these kiosks are already being planned for City Square West, the location where the library is intended, planned to go. So that as those things get built, we're prepared to incorporate some of that then.
With the public parking and stuff, those signs will go in and out.
Public parking
For
signs are going
those
in.
that are on the west, okay.
Yeah,
So is it just the attendance that we're doing these now because of the funding we have available to us now, and this is also the paseos and stuff. But the other side, because we haven't done City Square West yet, we're kind of effectively waiting on that one to establish those paseos and a lot of that work.
Yeah, because otherwise you'd really have a chopped up
Patchwork, yeah.
section, patchwork through there. But I mean, it's a big part of the objective of that block is to really, create that, pedestrian passageway north, south through there. I mean, because right now, obviously, it's like a wall. The building's like a wall, so you can't get through there. So, but yeah, it's definitely, that would definitely be a component of it.
So no, since this one presumption is that the funding for a lot of this is the funding that was from 41 reconstruction. So where would we be looking at getting the funding for finishing the rest of the sales on the other side?
Well,
Besides the,
keep in mind that the funding, so any of the state funding, stuff like that, did not fund this.
okay,
This is all local funding.
okay,
That goes towards this. So we've used our street reconstruction program to do that.
okay.
When we do I actually personally think it'll be easier when we do the redevelopment, because that can be actually incorporated into the whole
Yeah,
redevelopment cost of that block itself.
right.
But yeah, the stuff that we're showing here is stuff that the state and the county are just like, nope, that's yours.
So this is really more residual factors because we're doing, the carryover work from 41 and someone happens to overlap with it. We're taking advantage of the timing to do it.
Yeah, I mean, we felt it was really important that we all remember last summer that we made sure that we implemented those things that were really meant to help the businesses as part of the project. Now, obviously, the project takes more than a year to do, but I guess personally, we just really felt like this just needed to happen.
Yeah, you talked about the wayfinding and the heritage columns have been, asked for a long time when something's gonna get in there. So a lot of that stuff's been in place, but I totally agree. I think this is a perfect time. We kicked the road off last fall. Now we kind of kick off all this. It gives another new breath, 41 that I think is, I'm really looking forward to the wayfinding signs as much as anything. Cause that's what you hear a lot about. And I think it's something we've needed for a long time. And I think from there, we expand out and start doing our trails better. I mean, I just think that this is kind of the foundation of take it from here, wherever we got other things.
Kind of feel like, once we finish that in the paseos, it'll be a good marketing campaign just to let people know about it, because I don't, people will kind of stumble across it, but people won't really know what it is, what it means in terms of, that accessibility, the pedestrian friendliness. And so how, helping people realize, oh, hey, there's this other pedestrian corridor down there. Could really
Well,
help.
and I think also the fact that we're, it's probably the next slide, but the trail that,
Not quite.
okay, but the trail that we're, going down the railroad corridor is going to connect right into the ravine trail system, which basically serves everybody on the north end of town. So it provides everybody in the north end of town a bicycle way to be able, or walking, to get into downtown without having to cross a road, and right down into the heart of the downtown business district. And, and then real easy navigation to get people to go where we want them to go.
Yep.
Nice picture.
Question on the wayfinding signs, like that sign. Will that only give directional locations to public spaces?
Yes.
Okay, I was just curious, otherwise you're picking a which business gets,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understood. Yep, perfect. Thank you.
Yep, sticking to publicly owned spaces. And in addition, the historic district downtown, that'll be pointed out on this
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, part of it is like the Second Street Historic District. I mean, that's not picking out a business, but it certainly gets people down into that area and then they can see the businesses when they get down there.
Yeah.
Is there, this is a maybe off-topic question, any enforcement of like certain standards along like Second Street of maybe like some properties that might be overgrown, things like that, that we would be doing with any of this project?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think is a real benefit of the Downtown Business Alliance is to be able to work with them to say, what is it that you guys want us to do as a city? You know, so it could be that, or it could be them saying, and we've had these discussions before, you know, that we don't want people that are, you know, just plopping their car down in a parking stall, you know, in front of my business for 24 hours because they, you know, live upstairs or whatever. You know, it could be that the business district looks at it and says, we want you to have 2-hour parking down here. To me, I think that's sort of I think that's an ongoing discussion we should have with the business district, and I sort of expect that it's gonna change over time. You know, how aggressive they wanna be with that. We always have the ability to, you know, to enforce any ordinances that are out there, but we've tried in the downtown business area to work with the Business Alliance to be aggressive where they'd like us to be aggressive and not where they don't want us to.
Okay.
One point to the question around, you know, whether we would have wayfinding signage that points to specific businesses. We, on the kiosks, there is opportunity and we're exploring that to partner with the Downtown Business Alliance, whether we would do a directory or whether maybe we would just have a way to advertise the Downtown Business Alliance's website and get people to that, which is easier to maintain long-term.
Put a QR code.
Right, yep. Those are, and you know, and they've got their logo and things, and so maybe there's some ways to kind of work with them and incorporate some of that stuff to the extent that it makes sense to do that. So here's an example of, you know, one of those kiosks. Obviously, the design of it would be a little bit different than what they're showing here. And then you can also see that gateway arch and the light system there. This would be off of Second Street.
One thing I was just thinking of, like with the QR codes, that we should be cognizant of the permanence of like QR codes for advertising, because for example, there was I think it was I want to say it was like North Carolina or something like that, actually had like a URL or website for like their state Centennial 2000 or something like that, or whatever the URL was. And they had basically had it printed in all the license plates. And then for some reason, someone forgot to pay the domain registration. So someone who like was an online like shop or merchant or something like that basically grabbed that domain. And then now, like whenever you go to the license plates website, it goes to someone trying to sell you socks or something or whatever it is. And so, you know, the challenge is that, you know, just be cautious about that, because all it takes is like one thing to happen, this perfect storm, is suddenly that URL is pointing completely to the wrong place and you can't change the QR code unless you go around slapping all these stickers all over. But stuff like that does happen. Yep.
So the businesses are very aware that's not gonna be drivable anymore.
Yes.
Very aware. Positive. Okay,
Many times.
perfect.
The one thing that I'll say, go back to that slide one more time. So I've said it to these guys a number of times, but I personally think that we need to be cognizant about making sure that those lights aren't unimpressive. There's
I got some Christmas lights. You can just
well,
grab.
I guess what I mean by that is, you know, I've seen those lights done in low energy ways that are barely cast any light.
Mhm.
And I'm not trying to be a non-energy efficient sort of person, but I really think that those lights are gonna be a real inviting thing for people to want to walk down those alleyways at night. And if they're not bright enough, people, it just won't create that what we're trying to create there, I think.
Right, but warmth. That's
Right.
Huga.
Which
Yeah.
is why we're
Going
putting
on.
them on dimmer switches so that people can.
They can just go.
Yeah.
Put on the website, so. they can
It will be,
go there.
it will be nice though, cause I feel like every time I walk from that public parking lot that's right there to like the businesses, I almost get hit by a car every time, so that'll be nice to not be dodging cars.
Yeah, that's a sweet looking image. I like the look and the feel of that.
Yeah, it's a vibe for sure.
I wish there was an illustration showing the nighttime view of it, but yeah, I mean, I get where they're going, where you're going with it. Yeah.
So here, this is just kind of reminding you all the lots that are in the Paseo network that will be done and completed over the course of this summer as well. So some more photos as to what that archway system is going to look like. Yep.
That's gonna be so fun down there.
This is the other end. So this would be
His office.
Seafoam building. Yeah. Where it's located in
Yeah.
the Meadow Spring Church over here. So this is really connecting into that underpass system and that trail. One more component of this ends up being completing that Fifth Street reconstruction that occurred in 2022. And at the time, knowing that all the work would be done for the Paseo network and everything in 41, the next, over the course of these 2 summers here, the decision was made not to proceed with all of the streetscaping on Fifth Street. So that'll be part of what happens this year too, is to complete that off and tie it in. So this last slide ends up being the Minnesota River Bluffs Regional Trail. And so, those 2 extensions that I've been talking about, we are intending to incorporate wayfinding into trail. Well, and so you've got these trail marker signs that are at intersection points where there's a decision to be made by the trail user, so they understand, which can make that decision which direction to go. And then there's some trail kiosks that get incorporated into this project as well. The kiosk that is depicted on the Pine Street location, that would be part of that trailhead concept that we are considering for the library when that gets built. So you won't actually see a kiosk being placed in that location with this project. That would be tied to the library. We are intending to put a kiosk over by the Walnut Street parking lot. And then the county's looking at a kiosk more towards Athletic Park to designate it as a county regional trail. And this is just, an idea of what it is that the trail will look like. So there is landscaping incorporated into this. This location is representative of the area near the townhomes off of County Road 61. And so the intention to place back screening and landscaping for those arborvitae that currently exist, those are going to have to be removed for the project, but we are replacing in kind.
So it was, sorry,
Sorry,
Go ahead.
are some of them gonna be able to stay?
I don't believe so, if I recall.
I'm just going by that, cause that's what they
Yeah.
kinda are in size.
so I thought at one point we said it might be just a fence or wall, but now it will be. Maybe you didn't say, that.
it'll be
Maybe I made
planted.
that up in my mind, but it
No,
will
it'll be
definitely be
planted.
trees.
Yes.
They will love that, okay.
Plantings of some sort.
Yep.
We'll make sure that there's triplets that
Yes.
are running down the trail at the same time.
Yeah. This trail is going to be, I think, intended
red
primarily
trail.
for triplets in pink shirts, orange, pink.
You guys
shirts.
can recreate that, like you, Matt, Marshall and Nate, like go out and some.
Oh, we could do
choreographers.
that.
You could,
There you go.
thanks.
Marshall, been known to throw his face on characters and.
Yeah, I just saw that too. So,
And here, to provide you a summary of the costing of this, so the items that I walked through for the downtown street project for this summer are summarized here. With that total being $2.6 million for that implementation. The Minnesota River Bluffs Regional Trail is the 2.9 million. Now the Minnesota River Bluffs Regional Trail, that ends up being county costs and costs that are covered through grant that we were successful in receiving for this project. But this 2.6 million,
That's
that ends up being ours. Yeah.
Yeah. So that 3 million on the trail, we really don't have a lot of,
Right.
putting much into that one
No.
at all.
That's correct. Yep.
And one of the things I'll just point it out, we're having a call for a public hearing for the Paseo stuff. So that's the stuff that we have to pay for, the 2.6 million. The reason we're doing that is because we will finance that. And we actually will be assessing actually ourselves for that on our Paseo properties. So.
But I tell you what, I'm gonna be really excited when, after this fall and all of this is done. I think it's gonna look pretty
Well,
awesome.
one thing to point out, I mean, the trail's gonna take all summer, I think, but the Paseo stuff is,
So that timeline pretty much puts it into September. I mean,
Yeah, it'll be this fall. I mean, they'll pick apart at it. We're trying to separate out some of the things to, the banners from, what makes sense from a contractor bidding perspective.
it's not gonna go as long as it did last year, I guess is my
Yeah.
point.
I mean, if there's priorities, let us know. I mean, that's
Nope.
kind of.
what happened last year, nothing could be that long.
Yeah.
So
That
But
was,
getting to enjoy some of it, like even in the fall, I think getting to enjoy some of that will be like very exciting. Just be wandering
All
around.
evenings, sweatshirt and jeans weather on the
Yeah.
Paseo with the lights overhead.
sweatshirt and shorts, that's.
Sweatshirt and
The ultimate.
shorts, with lights, good lighting in the Paseos.
That'd be nice.
one other piece, I guess I forgot to mention, I meant to, is the communication side of this. So, this work won't be without, some level of disruption to the business community. There's going to be impacts to some of the parking lots, right? That in the Paseo network and all of that. So just like last year, the importance of communication between staff and the business community. And we will be working with Bolton and Mank, like we did last year too, to have a communication strategy and plan put in place. So, the business community continues to have a point of contact as they're, working through the construction. Try to keep people as informed as possible and also, be able to take that feedback and limit the impact to the extent that we can as well.
I mean, using the same mode through the Downtown Business Alliance.
Yeah, so I think we've just generally kind of previewed the timeline with them at their February meeting, and it's our intention at the March meeting to come back with some more detail.
And these details too,
Mhm.
because I think they'll be very excited to like see more visuals and
Yeah.
concrete idea.
Gotta bring the 46 back.
Oh.
In the last Downtown Business Lines meeting, they clapped at the end of Nate's presentation, and I thought that was hilarious. So maybe you could come again and get another round of applause.
Next time
Yeah.
I expect to be standing.
Pinnacle.
We'll do a standing ovation.
I don't know.
They ain't use their hands for other things.
You good?
I'm good, unless there's any other
All
questions.
right, questions for Nate? Questions for anyone?
Looks really good. I'm excited for, I mean, it's like, like a lot of these things, I'm just excited for it to be done. Because, when it's done, then it's, generates a lot of excitement and, we were talking about how important things like this are for really being a facilitator for encouraging and new investment, new businesses to come to downtown. And, this stuff like this only makes it better, right? It's, it's kind of like, it's really kind of decorating the cake that, it's already like really substantial, but this really kind of makes it, makes it really, really appealing for people looking at Chaska. It's like, wow, this is like a really cool area, right? As Paseo, it's really lit, it's pedestrian friendly, it has all these different amenities, there's good parking, where do I want to like invest? And I think we want people to be thinking that. So yeah, it's really great. So
Yeah, I'll just comment that recently read a comment on a city post about some vandalism that referenced the downtown in an inappropriate way. I'll just leave it at that, but I just think again, the continuing investment of making downtown a destination and putting money in there and we can, well lighting so people feel safe, all of those types of things I think really matter. And I hope individuals who think differently, pay attention, because I think the investment and the communication that's out there speaks for itself.
Anyone else? Are you guys comfortable if we just go ahead and move with 2414, which is the feasibility report for the street and
I do each one separately.
yes,
Yeah.
and then do we need more conversation on E is my question about the specs for the trail?
My only question on that, and I maybe just missed it, but how do we know what trees are being removed and what are staying? Or are they just taking them all out and those, in the documents, those trees are gonna be new trees? I'm particularly attached to some certain pine trees, so how do we know? Is there something that said it, or did I miss it? Cause there's about trees in like tonight's documents, but I can't tell if those are new trees or trees that are gonna be added.
So they're gonna be, the trees that are in the
That might-
plans are, trees that are in the plans are pretty general. They're intended to be that way so that, you know, when we're explaining the projects to those folks, that they understand that when we do get easements and things, that we have the ability to control the area within that easement. That's what they're being compensated for. But to your point, we are going out this week to start, the construction group would go out this week, mark out where those trees are, identify what the limits are, and then we'll be sending notices out to all the property owners, just letting them know, hey, here's the things that are coming, and expect that, that these trees would be going, trees that are being, trees that have been marked are all the ones that are proposed to go away, and so that stuff will go on this week.
So there'll be some sort of like ribbon or spray paint or something indicating.
Yeah, we don't paint trees, but we do ribbon on them, yeah,
Okay.
just in case one.
I just wanna know which ones I need to chain myself to make sure you guys can't take it.
Trust me, Matt and I have been through that too, so, yeah.
But the people, so the property owners that are being impacted, they'll know that kind of stuff,
But
okay?
a lot of them already know,
Well,
right?
yeah, but I think about like, I don't know, maybe I just wasn't paying attention. I know like I got the public meeting and, letter, but I don't know that I then thought about all those trees that are right there across the street and kind of, so that I don't sit there and stare at McDonald's basically through my bedroom window, if they're gonna stay or not. I like just didn't even think about it until I was like looking at this. So
Some of those will stay there,
Yeah, a
right?
lot of good points.
I don't think.
those are some of the ones I'm attached to, those pine trees right there across from
See,
Holiday.
it's the ones down by the Crystal
Yeah,
Palace.
yeah. I figured the ones that were far enough back, like on the Stoughton side, but then I was thinking all the way down to like, it's going all the way from like, so that people understand, like from like Hickory, it's like a long, yeah, like huge chunk of stuff. So, okay. Okay, that's what cause I was thinking about that. I was like, oh my gosh, those trees not gonna, cause in the winter, I'm like very aware, because I can like very much, when the people at Holiday talk over the loud thing, it reverberates in my house and it sounds like there's a strange person in my house. It's terrifying. So.
Well, I know that. I'm gonna go there every night. Pay inside.
You could, I'm just like, hey, Michaela.
We'll
I would
see
hear
inside
it.
pump four.
Yeah.
Seriously though, that's what I hear. Okay, that.
All right.
Perfect.
So I'm gonna go ahead and ask for a motion. Doug,
We did the public hearing already?
There is no public.
This
hearing.
is not a
Oh,
public
so
hearing.
it was the
That's what-
Calling for it.
Calling for it, okay.
yeah, so we're gonna have one at a later date.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking. So,
Yep.
at this point, I'd look for a motion on resolution 2024-14.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Hatfield,
Second?
second by Councilmember Wong, and that's for again, resolution 2024-14, accepting the feasibility report for the 2024 street utility reconstruction improvements, calling for a public improvement hearing and authorizing preparation of construction documents. Discussion. Hearing that, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Post same sign. All right, motion carries. Being that the presentation carried over to item E, unless there are any further questions or comments, I would look to entertain a motion on 2024-15 as well.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember McGraw,
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wong. That is adopting resolution 2024-15, approving plans and specs and authorize bidding for Minnesota River Bluffs Regional Trail, the Chaska connection. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Post same sign. Motion carries, moves on to item F. Letter regarding missing middle housing bill, HF 4009 and SF 3964.
Mayor and Councilmember, the item in front of you tonight is actually very similar to something we brought to you guys last year, when the legislature was having discussions about, actually, last year they were having two discussions. They were having discussions about taking away, city zoning authority, to where it is, but they were also having discussions about taking away our ability to collect things like parkland dedication fees and those types of things that help pay for those amenities that our existing residents shouldn't have to pay for when new residents are coming into town. We wrote a letter at that point opposing it. It did not go very far in the process.
The bill, not the letter.
The letter went far, the bill didn't go very far. That's right. This year, there seems to be a little bit more, I don't know, oomph behind the bill. And I think particularly because it's been tied to, a tool to try to preserve and create affordable housing, in cities. So Nate's going to go through and just sort of explain what they're talking about there. Interestingly enough, a lot of the stuff that they are wanting to accomplish or see cities do are things that we already do. But the real issue here to me is local control, that we lose the ability to have any ability to control what type of projects go on. So I'll turn it over to Nate.
I struggle to understand why this thing's gaining traction. I mean, I get it about the affordable housing piece, but man, think of what you're giving up to get that.
Yeah, well,
I know it's not us, but I struggle that this thing's getting any momentum to be brought forward as a bill. And the worst of it is, it's our representative.
I mean, to me, what's giving it more push this year is because last year, to me, it was tied more to look at how many fees developers are having to pay, and and I think, quite frankly, I don't think there was as much sympathy for that as there is about talking about how to create affordable housing within communities. The reality is the market's dictating a lot of this, and it's really hard to create tools that actually can deal with sort of those market force issues. But I'll let Nate sort of talk about some of the specific things that they're talking about. But it's a concern this year, and it's specifically a concern because of the loss of local control.
Yeah, I guess maybe without getting into, bullet by bullet on this, provide you a general idea as to where this bill is intending to go. And really what it ends up, what it's looking at is changing how single family zoning districts are interpreted and what's eligible to be built within them, and requiring cities to allow for, on single family lots, multifamily housing to be developed. So there's a lot of cities that are moving in this direction right now, and they're looking at that sort of thing. But those are the cities making that decision on their own and taking a look at the impacts of that approach, and understanding things like sewer capacity, emergency responsibility in those situations. Where are there, which areas of the city may be appropriate to upzone like that or allow for more density to occur, and making those decisions in an informed way. This bill is really looking at saying all single family zoning in the state is required to allow for multifamily zoning to be built. And it's not necessarily that every single family, lot with their, needs to have the ability to have like a 14-story, complex or something like that. I'm not saying that. But it opens it up for things like duplexes, triplexes, quads, those sorts of buildings, being permitted on single family lots. So that's one piece. Another is looking at minimum parking standards. I think that's another big one that stands out in this bill, and removing those. So taking away city's ability to legislate a minimum threshold of parking that needs to be provided by developers. And to some regards, I think the city of Chaska and our approach, we are pretty flexible with the parking that we require.
I think the
we've got our
reality is too, is that developers aren't going to under park development,
right.
but who should be dictating that?
Right. That ends up being, the thing. I think, and again, that's the thing where it's like, so a lot of this stuff we do, right? We work with developers to understand their parking needs and understand the use that's intended for it. Like on the apartments, I think recently is a good example of that, where we've allowed for a lower parking threshold be provided than what our code calls for. But we went through an analysis to figure that out and understand what's going to make sense in that situation. Whereas this bill, as it's being proposed, would say cities cannot, regulate a minimum threshold for parking. That would be determined by the developer. So that's another piece. Trying to think of what else. Another one that it's looking at is that cities without a major transit stop need to identify a commercial district in the city where high density development must be accepted where they must be accepted. And so that's an interesting one where a lot of cities don't have a major transit stop. I think Chaska would be included in that. And so without having that in place, we would need to declare a commercial district that would effectively be considered, an area that should be targeted for higher density to support transit, despite the fact that the transit doesn't exist.
Which again, for us, isn't that big a deal because we already have, say the apartments up by Kohl's, or the apartments by Dairy Queen and Quick Trip. But again, it's, a lot of cities have been making the argument, we don't even have a major commercial district. So where are we supposed to put this?
Mm-hmm. I think one other piece to understand, and that's being called for as the legislation is currently proposed, would be a severe reduction, if not elimination, of cities' abilities to have architectural requirements as well. So you think about the design requirements that we look at whenever we have an industrial, commercial, or multifamily building coming through. If this bill were enacted as it's currently drafted, we wouldn't have that ability anymore. So again, I think these are things that the examples that I'm putting forward, I think you could point to cities in the state that are already doing some of this work,
Including us.
And so we're not necessarily, I don't think, adverse to the idea of, working with developers and finding, solutions, and also promoting a mix of housing ranges. Chaska's got a longstanding goal, right, of having that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, at price points available in our city. And we actively work on that. But I think the difference here is that when we're working on those things, when we're setting those goals and objectives, and we're working on, the policies and guidelines and ordinances that we have in place, those are all informed by and have that opportunity for discretion and input by our local community to understand how that goes. This bill would really remove a lot of that. And so that's, I think, where, at least as I look at it, the biggest concern comes is that that overriding of the local control that we currently, expect and enjoy and appreciate. And I think our residents, right, expect that ability to be engaged in those conversations.
So let me kind of reframe it from a resident's perspective. So if a development was going in, that was let's say, like, let's look at the example of like over by Autumn Woods. I can't remember the name of the development off the top of my head now, that, went in, that was being built right now, right?
Yeah, the reserve.
By the reserve, right? So if that was under this, set of legislation, a lot of what happened then wouldn't have happened because, we had the developer came, they presented, right? The applicant presented everything. They said, this is what we were planning on doing. The residents came, they're like, oh my gosh, this is not acceptable, it's traffic, all these different issues. And then, because of that, it really kind of, we had a number of conversations or interactions with the developer and said, well, what, this isn't aligned with what the community's values are, what the community wants. So we kind of sent them back to the drawing board and they kind of worked with the residents to kind of figure out something that would work, right? And that was an effective, solution that the residents who are adjacent to it felt like they were okay with it. The developer felt they were okay, got built consistent with the community's values, and everyone had a net positive out of this. Under this current legislation, there would be no public process based on what it said. The developer would come and say, well, I've got these lots, I'm just going to make it all duplexes or all high density because I'm going to make a lot more money that way. Don't have to follow any local standards for, parking or for appearance or aesthetics, whatever the heck I want. And then, if, basically the residents just find out when it starts going up, and like it or not, this is what you're stuck with without any input. That kind of sort of sums up the residents'
Yeah, I mean, I
perspective.
think I think that's a good example of a development where just our process that we have locally, I think worked well for everybody involved. Yeah, in that if you had a developer really coming forward that was not not really caring that they sort of tried to address some of those concerns or issues, they could just say, you don't have the ability to stop me from doing this.
So, which means that it has impacts to like, if there's like adjacent parkland or sewage systems that were undersized for that, or, power and,
Yeah, I mean,
other
that's one of the
services, right?
things that has been talked about by the league too, is just this idea about our infrastructure. That we size our infrastructure to serve, a certain amount of sewage capacity, certain amount of water, certain amount of road capacity. It sort of throws that out. And the other one, when we're talking about the parking standards, in Chaska, we've always if we've had like apartment buildings that are close to like in downtown and stuff, we've always we have in our ordinance that, they can meet 25% of their parking requirements on street. But, that's a decision that we've made as a community. But in essence, if a apartment was being built and they relied on all public parking to, meet their parking needs, is that equitable to the rest of the community that's having to pay for that?
Is this something that if the legislation were passed, that it would override our comp plan in terms, because, we have open zoning, right? So we have something like, here's a piece of land, it's guided for something, but we don't actually make it a zone district until after we approve it. Under that circumstance, is it carte blanche for a developer coming, I'm gonna build whatever the heck I want?
I think you're getting at some of the ambiguity in the language as it's currently written and drafted, and that's some of the concern that the league is bringing up as well. Is that, some of the things that are in this legislation are at odds with existing legislation, or may put cities in a position where they're now at odds with their own comprehensive plan. And how does that get rectified and understood?
Well,
I think some of that is unknown.
Even gets into the capacity issue
Exactly.
for sewer, roads, all that type of stuff. And so, yeah, it puts it in conflict, and presumably just say that the zoning, that the zoning would override that.
I think, it comes across as a really raw deal for residents, right? To be able to have any input in what goes in, in the community, especially if it's nearby where you live.
Well, that's right. I mean, if you lived there and all of a sudden a couple lots come for sale, all of a sudden you have a 15-story high rise there or something like isn't that one of the examples in there? Stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would depend on the specific location, the site,
Right.
right? If it's a single family lot, you're not gonna see that, but yeah, I mean, if it's an area that's designed for a more kind of multifamily type structure, it does, this bill does reduce the city's ability to, govern the scale of that, right?
So the hypothetical, let's say a house burns down in downtown Chaska and someone says, I can make a lot more money if I like make this to a duplex in downtown Chaska, which is a historic area, right? That means that.
But our guidelines of the historic district would overrule that, wouldn't it?
No.
No.
So even historic district, or if it was even just a block outside the historic district, they wouldn't have to abide by what matches in the neighborhood. They said, I'm going to build something completely modern, concrete, square, make it like completely new edge, plop it right down the middle of that, the
Because
Chaska
that
neighborhood.
gets to that whole idea of design guidelines,
Yep.
that you can't get into telling people exactly
Yeah.
what that would look like.
Yep. And then they could say, well, I'm going to make a 4-unit place, super modern, so it's going to attract this particular, buyer or whatever it is, and put it in the middle of downtown Chaska.
Would that take out the anti-monotony law too?
Yes.
So somebody could come in and build 15 homes that are all totally identical.
So pretty much everything we got on the
Jeez.
books, everything we're rewriting right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in Cannon Hole in Arizona.
Yeah.
So it's like basically, I mean, we're talking not little control, but basically zero control
Yeah,
is what
and-
it's saying.
And it's a big deal to all cities out there. I mean, there's cities that exist out there like Houston, Texas, that don't have any zoning.
Yeah.
And, you can see it. It's,
But it's not to the point where someone says, a house, like I'm gonna take a house in the middle of the downtown Chaska, I'm just gonna turn it into a restaurant because it's a nice cozy little place. It doesn't change that.
no, this
It's
is
just
really
purely residential.
This is
Okay,
on
right.
residential.
Yeah, so it doesn't change the zoning, so, but if it's residential, then suddenly it's still a can of worms because you could be in a nice single family development and then someone says, I could just make a bunch of money, just take this, flip this house into a multifamily unit and then break it up and sell it or rent it out.
Yeah.
Is this gonna be a standalone bill or is this gonna end up in an omnibus bill? And then it gets rammed down our throat. I mean, I know we don't have a lot of control over
I
that,
don't
but
know.
what's the word on that so far?
I mean, right now it's 2 individual bills.
Yeah, there's a bill in the House, there's a bill in the Senate. They're both companion bills. They're basically saying the same thing. They're going through the committee process right now. I think it's a 12-week timeline.
I think March 22nd is the first deadline for committees, for the first, to be heard in committee the first time.
So assuming they get through, and I'm going to quickly get ahead of my skis, but assuming they get through the committee process, what that needs to look like, then it would start to be considered by the full legislature. So there's some steps to be taken, but now is the time, as we're being advised by the league and by and our lobbyists that we work with. Now is the time to be submitting comments and making legislators aware of our concerns.
I know this letter is going to our representatives. Have we had some conversations with them or initially?
Not yet.
I actually have a meeting on Friday with Representative Rain. And this is one of the things I'm gonna talk to her about.
Is this getting bipartisan support or is it?
Yes. That's the thing, that's the other thing that makes this a little bit more, I don't know if I want to say imminent, but it makes it gives it a little bit more oomph because it is a bipartisan support right now.
Is there a reason for it be called the missing middle housing bill? Is that confusion?
What they're trying to accomplish with this bill is they're saying that, that there's houses that are being built on the really low end and there's houses that are being built on the very upper end. But that it's really hard for people who are sort of in the middle. And they view that this bill will reduce the costs associated for developers to develop these homes and therefore will create more opportunity for houses that are sort of in mid-range.
Well, I was just reading some posts here and it talks about, it aligns with other states meant to increase the supply of housing, especially at lower cost levels, sometimes called starter homes. So, you know, figure out which one, third is that for us, right?
But if you, if you really think about this, as you build more of the high-end homes, the middle homes go up a little bit, but all of it, I mean, look at our average price of a home here, average mean is, I don't know. It's kind of frustrating that if people don't want to build affordable, what does that say? That, I don't know. I don't know. It's just, I struggle with these things like this, that they come in and tell us that we gotta do this and, but that's what happens.
I think it's important to know, as we've said, a lot of the things that they're talking about in here, as a city, we have been doing and focus on. Which is again why we strongly feel like left on our own choice and our ability to have the landscape fit. Can't speak to other cities because I'm not studying other cities, but I suspect obviously if there's interest, there must be cities that maybe aren't doing this type of thing as effectively as well. So, yeah, it's interesting. Like I said, I appreciate this conversation because I tried to do some work ahead of time to understand it because it's a little messy. And of course, whatever article you decide to read is gonna sometimes have a intent one way or the other, so it's good to kind of hear kind of a conversation of that piece, and you know, I think you kind of, you know, putting that in that very simple terms of because as we know, right, the reality will be is when that duplex gets built next to that single family home, they're not going to go complain to their state legislature. They're gonna sit in that, you know, those chairs right there and complain to us, and we're gonna say,
Can't do anything.
we didn't have anything to do, we couldn't do it.
Yep.
Which is like the worst because they're still mad. We understand why they're mad. But we really, and we can't tell them anything that's gonna make them feel better because it's like,
And for the most part, in that case, you might even agree with them, right? And say, yeah, we completely agree with you, but that power's been taken away from all of us. And by proxy been taken away from them, right? I mean, that's the bigger thing, is that in the current model, the power lies with constituents of this community, right? To make that decision by having us as electeds. But by proxy, this legislation is taking that power and putting it at the state level instead of in the hands of people here.
Well. All right,
As you can see, we're recommending, Nate put together a letter. You know, we're recommending that you adopt the letter. It certainly gives it a lot more power if it's coming from the council as a whole. And then we would pass that along then to our representatives. And like I said, I'm meeting with Representative Rame on Friday. And this will be one of the things that I'll bring up.
here from her too. All right, somebody willing to make a motion to authorize the city administrator to
Yep. So move.
send the letter? So I have a motion by Councilmember Wong,
Second,
second by Councilmember Hatfield, again, letter regarding missing middle housing bill 409 and Senate 3964. So further discussion. We had a pretty healthy one. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Post same sign. Motion carries. All right, that's it on the action items. We're moving to bills. Anyone got a question on bills?
Yep, two questions will be quick, both on page 25. The first item is for Under Tom Kramer, this is temp fire station contract. So this doesn't detail what it is.
Yeah, that's actually work that's actually being done to build sort of the garage that we're building next to it to house the offices during. And then great thing is that when they're out of there, then we'll use it as actual storage for our public works.
Okay, so we build it as like a long-term building and then just like, let's just use it temporarily for one thing, convert it to use later. Great. And then second one is traveler's indemnity. So I noticed that there's one that's an item paid for 2024 boiler and machinery, but it seems odd that it's being paid to traveler's indemnity.
Yeah,
Usually the other
so
way.
we own the Minnesota River power station down there. We have a contract with MMPA to basically pay us for the debt service and then pay any operational costs associated with it.
Okay.
That's a complicated enough piece of equipment that the League of Minnesota Cities will not insure it. So we have to go through a special company to actually get that insured, which is Travelers.
Okay.
And so that's what the premium is for, is to pay for that insurance. And then we get reimbursed from MMPA for that.
Okay, so it's basically a premium on that equipment.
Yep.
Got it. Okay, makes sense. That's all I got. Thank you.
Anyone else? Motion to pay the bills.
So move.
Motion by Councilor Wong,
Second.
second by Councilor Hatfield to pay the bills. Discussion? Elise?
Councilmember Hatfield?
Yes.
Councilmember Wong?
Aye.
Councilmember McGrath?
Aye.
Mayor Winchell?
Yes. All right, moves us into other business. Councilmember Hatfield.
Yeah, just a few things. Celebrated the library's 101st birthday, so that was a nice event, well attended. It was nice to get to be in the library. I usually read my books in the Libby app, or listen to them, I guess, rather. So it was nice to go down there and see all the history, and they just did a really great job with it. So happy birthday to the library. The new history book is out. So from 1950 to 2000 of Chaska's history is available at the History Center. And if you didn't pre-order it, they do have copies, and it's just nice. Go down to the History Center. It's a lot of fun, maybe like on a rainy day or a cold day. They have Saturday hours now, and which I think is awesome, because then if you have kids in school or something, they could go with you. But I looked around the Would You Live to 100 exhibit, which was kind of fun. And then just got to spend some time looking at like my old yearbook and looking at the new history book, of course, which was a little bit more fun than the previous one. While that one was fun too, this one I actually get to know people in it. So I thought it was a little more fun. So highly recommend that book, especially if you love to learn about Chaska, because it is a little more recent. You'll recognize more of the stuff in there probably. So.
And that is $75, I believe.
Right, and you'd get, I think, still even.
You get a year's membership.
Yep, you get a year's membership, and that's to
For
the Chaska.
And Carver.
And Carver, yep.
Carver
Mhm.
County.
Yep, to the both historical societies.
What years was it again?
This was 1950 to 2000. Yep, so, yeah, I just like had a blast. I didn't intend to go down there for, I think it was like 2 hours. I ended up being down there. I intended just to get my book and leave, but I spent quite a bit more time down there. It was a lot of fun. So highly recommend. So that's out. The Community Center Carnival is this Friday from 5:30 to 7:30, free to attend. So there'll be carnival games, inflatable jumpers, and more. All ages are welcome. So that is this Friday, which I've heard I don't think I've been to that, but I've heard it's fun. So maybe someone else can talk about that. But this Friday is National Employee Appreciation Day. So I was writing my little employee appreciation notes to all my employees in my full-time job. And just wanted to also say thank you. I know there was the appreciation breakfast I didn't get to attend, but just appreciate all of our city staff who do such an amazing job. So I just wanted to give a shout out with that being on Friday, that I deeply appreciate our staff. I think it's overlooked how lucky we are to have such amazing staff here at the city. So that, and then my last thing is just maybe others will talk more about this, but Cooper's, few days left of Cooper's being open, at least based on the date they had publicized. So if you want to get down there, I'm gonna miss like the finger bread, that's what I call it, loaves, that's like my favorite, things like that. To get down there and shop a little before they close, and then just to thank Gary and Sandy for all they've done for the community. Very much going to be missed. And really just a bummer, but completely understandable where they're coming from, and hopefully we can get something good in there. But just want to recognize and appreciate Gary and Sandy for all they've done. And just there's a lot in that history book even about Cooper's, which a lot of it I didn't know. So you can go read about Cooper's even in that history book and get to hear how truly influential that grocery store has been in Chaska's history. So thank you, Gary and Sandy, for all you've done. And that's it. That's all I have.
Thank you. Good report. Councilmember Wong.
Let's see, so, yeah, I just want to give congratulations to city employees who, like, especially the ones who actually won the awards this year. There are 4 of them, so, congratulations on their achievements there. Also that, let's see, on Friday, April 12th, is Chaska Bash, is a fundraiser for the district, for Chaska High School. And so that's, Friday, April 12th. Christmas in May is coming up, and May 4th. The grand opening of the Loop, our revitalized Chaska Park 30 is the Loop is being reborn as Sunday, May 5th, right after Christmas in May. So it'll be a busy weekend. And then then Taste of Chaska is on May 8th, and then River City Days is on July 26th. And I think that this was, something that was mentioned as well earlier, that there's going to be a public memorial for the Burnsville public safety officers. That'll be on Wednesday, the 28th at 11 a.m. at Grace Church in Eden Prairie. So for anyone who wants to attend, it's open to the public. And finally, to end on a little bit of a positive note, the Chaska High School, there's an attachment in the packet this evening. Chaska High School had a number of different recognitions. I'm not going to go into all the depth, but there were 3 national merit finalists this year, or that were recognized this year. 3 knowledgeable teams are going on to postseason play. 48 DECA students are advancing to state, including 6 section winners. Science Bowl team plays 7th at state, which is pretty cool. And of course, Stormhawks wrestling also advanced to 6 AAA semifinals. So great stuff happening at the high school. So, and also, one last thing, also I'd like to offer congratulations to Team Gunsel for winning in the
The international spiel.
International spiel.
Yeah, at St. Paul Curling Club.
That's a pretty big achievement. So very cool.
Yeah, I don't want to brag, but they were the youngest people ever in the 106 years that's been going on to win it. So it was sort of a big deal for them.
The youngest in 106 years. That's a
Yeah.
pretty big deal. So
That's
very cool. Congratulations.
fun weekend.
Awesome. And also the same team represented USA curling was it an event up in Green Bay too,
Mhm.
right? So that was actually really cool. So
Yeah.
some fine young people here in our community. So very cool. That's all I've got.
All right. Councilman Wong, or you over there. Right.
Me.
Well, what's his name?
Okay, I had a couple things, just a couple observations in town. Winter and spring are pretty busy for me. I'm a lot of basketball courts. Just kind of a recognition of the Chaska Tech Center, like has a nice sign up. It looks really nice. It's, it's one of those things where you go through concept plans, we go through all these plans, and then to see it in being built out. And interesting enough, I actually just Googled it to make sure, kind of curious. And there's a lot of the owners are doing good marketing to understand and get that message out of what it is and everything like that. So that area is.
Heard how they're doing?
Yeah, it's been a couple months since we've gotten an update, but they were working on some anchor tenants there and then filling the other spaces. I'll try and get an update for next week.
Yeah, I mean, it just looks really nice. They got
Yes.
like the awnings on the side, they got the brick around the edge, nice Chaska Tech
Yeah, it
Center
really looked
sign.
nice.
Looks like a really nice space. I don't get north on 41 as much as I probably should, but just recognition of going that direction the other day and realizing how much Costco's come along and how much that space and those houses just look really nice in that space. Just kind of a recognition of that. I know people are getting excited. We'll get excited for that. I guess just a question and just looking forward, maybe an update on the West Creek development, right, with some of the communication with Carver County, and Launch Ministry. That was gonna be the, I guess, I don't know, the operator of that, is that the terminology? So I guess just asking the question of kind of what's the update of who, if that developer has communicated, like who the plan or what the plan is for that, for lack of a better word, operator of that site?
Yep. So they are gonna be working with the CAP agency, which is gonna be providing all the services that are down there that were gonna be provided for by Launch before. We've worked with the CAP agency specifically with the food shelf when that first came in. And we've always had good luck working with the CAF agency. We haven't worked in this specific area with them, but that's somebody that the county sort of lined up to have come in and take on the operations.
And thank you for that update. Lastly, just kind of an update. Prior to our last meeting, I talked about taking a field trip to look at city-owned facilities with private branding on them in West Des Moines. So my son played basketball in West Des Moines 2 weekends ago, maybe 3. And they built, I just looked at the stats here, it opened in 2021, this huge publicly, city of West Des Moines owns it. I mean, a hockey rink, 4 to 5 basketball courts next to like probably 3 open fields. So at a single moment, there was this huge basketball tournament going on. There was also 2 games of indoor softball being played and a hockey match
All of this under the same roof?
all under the same roof. This thing is massive.
The city of West Des Moines has gotta be one of the fastest growing cities in the entire country. It's a pretty impressive suburb.
Because Iowa's so cool right now.
Well, I guess if I just read what I Googled right in front of me, it's
Fuck.
113, a little over 113,000 square feet, 2 sheets of ice, 14 square foot concourse, field house with mezzanine seating for spectators, 100,000 square feet. So, but it's interesting because the overall site has a private firm, Mid-American Energy. But then like the field house was Hy-Vee. So you kind of had this kind of interplay of the whole building with a big name on the outside, branded socially. It did have right on there the West Des Moines logo and, owned and operated by West Des Moines. And then you just kind of had a good mix. So I like I said, it was just interesting to kind of see, because I do think when we've had conversations about our facilities in our city, I think sometimes we worry about losing some of that public or city pride and identity. And I actually thought, like I said, I thought it was really kind of nicely done. And when you're there, I mean, and I think that's true for here, like you see it a couple times and then it's just, this is where you're going to do your curling or workout or anything like that. So it's just interesting kind of see, because I haven't seen, I've seen a few around here, but this is a pretty massive site. And I just thought it was interesting how, so we've talked about like, do you have a overall name and then you have different areas of the building, they have a different name. They've clearly kind of figured it out, and I'm just curious on what national attention the Mid-American Energy Recplex gets in kind of those naming rights. But it was just really interesting, kind of a pretty impressive facility, but nicely done by the city of West Des Moines. So that's my report on mine. That went much better than the basketball games went. Unfortunately, in Iowa in 5th grade, you can do things like zone press that our kids never experience, and they do it really effectively. And it was a struggle. The kids had some good character building opportunities as well as fun in the hotel, of course. So I believe that is all I have.
Hey,
I have nothing to add. I just pulled up the West Des Moines Recplex here, and yeah, it's an impressive facility. But no, I don't have anything to add.
Elise,
Nothing.
good stuff. Mr. Clark, you're still here. Matt? All right, I just want to go over a few things as well. I kind of mentioned the Burnsville incident. I did forget to mention, we've been getting some questions. Is the city gonna do something? Like I said, we've kind of, there's a lot of things going on in that family right now. So, we have an officer that's been in touch with them and kind of working with them. So once things calm down a little bit, we're gonna see if there's something we can do for them, or maybe they don't know. I don't know. We wanna just, so we're kind of working our way through that. So, I know I've gotten a call or two on that already and asked about that. So I just want to let people know that that is, right now is the plan. So, and, Councilmember Wong mentioned it, the public memorial will be, February 28th at 11 a.m. and it's at Grace, and it's gonna be a madhouse. I'm sure that there's gonna be additional parking somewhere in shuttling. I don't know how many people can show up at one of those, so, it's hard to say. So, if you're gonna go, I'd plan to go and be there plenty early. So, but I hope they have that problem that there's not enough parking and there's that many people there, because it's definitely a life-changing event for many people, so. I talked to Lisa about our pay box. What did you think?
Yeah, so I went out there and looked
So,
at,
maybe I should clarify. I got a phone call from a resident that said our new pay box looks really pretty, but when you're in your car, you can't operate it and get your bill in there. 'Cause you gotta hold the lid up and then slide it in. And maybe for a 20-year-old, but maybe not for an 80-year-old. And so I was here and I drove up to it, and I can definitely see that that's an issue.
yeah, so this paybox is new and it, is. In talking with our utility billing folks, it is easy to get the lid up. It's not, difficult, but it doesn't go up very far. So to be able to actually get your letter in, it's more difficult. Some of the reasons for that is it's obviously a lot more secure than our last one was. Additionally, with our last one, it was if it rained, our bills would be wet and they'd be hanging them up. So this alleviates that issue. Additionally, what was happening before with our old one, we have to have a staff member come in on holiday weekends to make sure that any payments made over that weekend weren't getting stuck necessarily. And sometimes we would find payments on the ground, and so that became an issue. This is to, eliminate that, so that, we don't have to have a staff member come in on those weekends and take care of it. But I did see what you were talking about, that, yeah, the opening's not very big and you kind of have to use both hands, one to put the letter in and one to lift
Well,
it.
like I said, he told me I didn't pay my bill and the city's just gonna have to figure it out because I can't get my bill paid. So hopefully we can look at something and see if there's a way that, I don't know, I get all of those points as well, but it's definitely, I can see where it's gonna be a struggle, and if we got people that are paying that, but I don't know what the answer is. Maybe we contact the supplier and see if there's something.
Do some follow-up and see if there's, opportunities to look at something a little different, or if they can change how wide that goes, that sort of thing.
Cause it doesn't even look like it's open when you do it.
Yeah, if any security cameras caught us as we were out there taking a look at it, it probably looks like we were just seeing how far we could actually get something in, just to kind of test it out.
I think it's also a bit of a, to your point, it's, not only is a frustration for someone who has, challenges with something like that, it could also be dangerous. I could see like my own mom who's, older, is probably, closer to 90. And she would probably get so focused on doing that, she might take her foot off the brakes and something else might happen. So, I mean, it's one of those things, the more complicated, I mean, I understand the benefits of it. We don't want to end up creating more problems because of fixing something else. Let's try to find something that, is the usability is there for people of all ages,
All right, thanks. But anyways, as long as we're, just want to make sure that we are looking into it. So I was up in the Costco area and there's a lot of graffiti on the old conference center.
Mm.
Is that
Building?
on the building, right? If you go in that last parking lot that's in between the apartments and that, you go around, you can, as you spin around, you can see it's all graffitied up. Is that, I don't think it's our responsibility, but do we let them know that they need to clean that off?
Yeah, we can reach out to them. Do you want to reach out to?
I don't know, how that's gonna go.
I can,
Yeah.
But if it's pretty obvious, you can see it right from the car. It's just on but I'll call it the very south end of the building.
Not a very good way to market your building.
No, no. Now that was a couple of weeks ago I was out there. I probably doubt that it's changed much, or there could be more there. I don't know. I don't know. So, we'll get that. And as long as we're up in that area, the DQ's back open again, the Dairy Queens.
Been there.
Good. You walk in and it's kind of different. It's completely different how you walk in and compared to the old one. It's like, whoa. So glad to have that open again. I know especially as like days like today, it was probably pretty busy for February when it's 57 degrees. So
Yeah, just a comment on that. I actually thought it was interesting how involved and communicative through like social media, the owners and operators of that work, because it was just people, they kept updating and plans. I just thought it was a very proactive way of making sure that everyone knew it was their, what their intent was, and I'm sure also it helped get business back. They want us to forget about them, which last summer was a difficult choice when you wanted some ice cream and the closest.
that's why I go to Culver's and the line was like a block long.
Yeah, Culver's is custard. I
It
like.
was like driving to Waconia. I was showing some DQ loyalty.
I know, that was the closest, like, you were kind of in trouble, so.
I would as well like to talk about Cooper's closing. It's sad. It's a challenge. I got an email here during the council meeting from a resident down there that's saying what's gonna happen to us that walk or don't have transportation. I think I heard somewhere through somebody, might have even been Cap, about getting some bus services a couple
No,
times
that
a
was,
week. Or is that us?
Yeah, so we had Julie Grove actually be part of the discussions, actually in conjunction with social services, to talk about how we can get some regular bus service down there to be able to get people up to the grocery stores. So there's gonna be more to come on that.
That's good to know, and I just want to put that out for anybody that's may still be listening at this time of the night, but we also know that, we have been working really hard on finding a possible another grocer to go in there. You just never know. And I'm assuming our negotiations are still open, looking for people at this point. And we're gonna still actively try. That's a goal of really for us as a council to have that grocery store there. And just like this person had emailed me, there is a ton of walkers in that area. We got the senior complexes around there. That's a big piece of what Chaska still needs. And again, going back to the Coopers, I just want to say thank you to Gary and Sandy. They've been huge boosters of this community for a long time. And I know that this was not an easy decision for the Coopers to close the store down. But I think that they just, they're getting up there in age and there's no one to really take it over. And it was a decision they had to make. And I think after Matt and I have talked a little bit about it, I think there was a lot of relief when the decision was finally made, that, because I'm sure it's been weighing. I mean, how long have we talked about helping whatever we can do? So, but anyways, thank you to Gary and Sandy, and appreciate everything that you've done for our community. And just gonna be a sad day on March 2nd when that door goes closed, but just know we're doing our best to try to get something else in there. Like I said, it's still one of our number one goals is to get a grocery store back in there. Public safety bids, we put our public safety building out to bids, they've closed. Staff's been going through them, we got a lot of bids, which is a good thing, so that means that there's people out there and, they should be coming back at the March 4th meeting, barring anything go haywire, so March 4th meeting, they will be, coming back before the council, with approval, hopefully approval, and then we start looking for talking to the contractor, so. Exciting that it seems like we've talked about this for quite a while. It's exciting that we're getting closer and closer to that day. So, we as a city, we're having our department retreat, March 21, 22nd. So, 2 full days of figuring out next steps for the city. Next council meetings are March 4th and 18th. We're back to our normal 1st and 3rd. March 4th, I'm out. I am heading out of country, for a week, so I will not be at the March 4th. Pro Tem Gra will be at the helm here, getting everything done. So, thanks in advance for that. And, that's all I got. Last call. Not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion by Councilmember Hubbard.
Nope,
Hatfield.
Hatfield.
Hatfield,
It's not even here.
not even here, I get it. So, one of them H's over
Just
there.
sensed it.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Gra. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Post same sign. We're adjourned. We'll see you here.